Welcome everyone to Highlands College and to Butte and to this September meeting of the Board of Regents. I look forward to spending today and half of tomorrow with each of you. What I'd like to do is begin with roll call. Present.
Tess is excused. Regent Buchanan. Regent Robala. Here. Regent Robinson. Here. Regent Krell.
Aye.
Regent Albrecht.
Here.
Commissioner Christian.
Here.
The governor's office is represented. She's here somewhere. And Superintendent Juneau. Here.
Thank you, Lynette. I appreciate that, and thanks to you and Amy for making sure that we all get here and have a place to stay once we arrive, and for taking care of all of the logistics for so many folks. We appreciate your efforts. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from July 15th.
So moved.
Thank you. A motion has been made. Are there questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? So a motion has been made to approve the minutes from July 15th. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign? The motion carries. Thank you. What I would like to do is just postpone our introductions until a place in my comments, and then I will turn it over to campuses for respective introductions. But at this time, I would like to welcome Chancellor Blackheader to the podium.
Good morning. Chair McLean, members of the board, Mr. Christian, colleagues, welcome to Montana Tech Highlands College. We're delighted to be here. I was going to take a few moments to expound on some highlights such as our new turf and ever improving facilities, or the progress that we're making on getting PhD funding that was part of the amendment last year, or talk about some of the Goldwater Scholars or Newman Fellows that we are getting on a regular basis. Joe Mitzel is our second one in a row. Or I was going to talk about our recent ranking of #1 on the return on investment on the college affordability organization that we received here lately, but I won't. All right? But I do want to thank, and this has been a pretty incredible week here, I do want to thank people around Montana Tech. I want to do this publicly. I know that many of you have been here for some of these events, but let me tell you what's happened in the last couple of weeks. We have hosted a career fair with 104 companies on our campus. We had over 1,000 students that were going through that career fair, getting jobs, internships, permanent jobs from not just Montana Tech, but from campuses around the state. On September 11th, Linda McCullough was here, the Montana Secretary of State, for our remembrance of September 11th. We had our Native American Day on September 13th, and a luncheon that went with that. We hosted the Run Amok. The Montana Campus Compact was here just this last Saturday, and the Economic Summit, which I know many of you were there at and were part of. We had 4,500 badges that we printed from registrants, and 4,000 of those were picked up. So I don't know whether the other 500 didn't show, but somewhere between 4,000 and 4,500 people came to our campus, and incredible people came with that in terms of the speakers. And then we turn around today and we have the Board of Regents here at our Highlands College. And so I have to say I was drafting a note that I wanted to write to the faculty and staff here, and it starts out with something like, I'm humbled by the positive attitude and the servant leadership attitudes and actions of the faculty and staff at Montana Tech. And truly I am when you look around and see all the work that's done. This is a big deal for us to have the Board of Regents on this campus. It is the first time it's ever been on the Highlands campus, if you will. And I can only say thank you. And I would ask that you would help me thank the people of Montana Tech and all the volunteers as well. As part of that, Dean Garrick has worked hard with his staff here at Montana Tech, and I wanted to give him a little gift as he starts to officially welcome us here. This is something Vicki and I picked up for him, and if you know Butte, Martha Cooney is a famous artist here in town, and so we have a picture, and we had her commission that. It's a picture of the Highlands Mountains and it says Highlands College and the date that we were renamed to Highlands College. So John Garrick, thank you for your work.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner, Deputy Commissioners, Chancellors, and my colleagues. President Karras, Dean Bingham, Dean Good, Dean Riley, Dean Wolf, Dean Hayatella, Dean Clark, President Simon, President Watson. We never get mentioned. Good morning to you all. You know, as part of the review and the re-envisioning and rebranding of two-year education, one of our goals is to increase public awareness of us. A year ago, after our name got changed, I was thinking, how do we do that? And I had 3 wishes that I thought could do that. My first wish was that Highlands could host a statewide research day for two-year students. And my second wish was to be the first, through Montana Tech, to award an honorary Associate of Science degree. And third, I wish that Highlands College could host a Board of Regents meeting. Well, I don't know which one of you is my fairy godmother or godfather, but my wishes came true. And I don't know how hard Cinderella worked to get to go to the ball, but I gotta tell you, this was a huge amount of work. Be careful what you wish for, maxim applies. But here we are, so I need to publicly thank my staff. You know, we learn the meaning of duties as assigned. I know personally how to mop the floor in this room and how to wipe down all the chairs. And so one day we're mopping, the next day I'm standing before the Board of Regents. So it's a real cultural leap, you know. So I want to thank Chancellor Blackketter and his executive committee for allowing this day to happen, and publicly thank the Commissioner, the Board of Regents, for allowing this day to be, allowing my wish to come true, and have the great pleasure of actually saying the words, "Welcome to Highlands College," in the September Board of Regents meeting. Okay, so here's the lay of the land. You go out of the Commons, bathrooms are in either direction, and they're marked. The relaxation room is right across the hall, so there's goodies and places you can relax, but you can't get away from the meeting because there's a TV in there. So you know, Tech is a STEM-focused school, and that's fantastic. But I needed a little more. So we now have 3 art spaces here at Highlands College. So if you need a break from the meeting and art helps you relax and renews your spirit as it does for me, leave the room, walk around the building, and discover the art. Speaking of art, at the main table, you each have a little work of art designed by a student, made on our 3D printers. And it is a replica of our large sculpture hanging from the ceiling over on the other side of the room, and we entitle it Education, because you can't figure out where the end is, because there is no end to education, it's lifelong. So the title of our sculpture and your replicas is Education. Yesterday was Constitution Day. The Constitution, the 226th anniversary of the signing of our Constitution, the foundational document of our government, and the guarantor of all of our freedoms. So, as we sit here in Butte, America, in the shadow of the Highlands Mountains, I'm reminded of Montana's beauty, surrounds us, as well as the beauty of America's freedoms. And I thought that we should take note of that beauty. And so I thought we'd start the day with some beautiful and compelling words by John Muir, naturalist and father of our national parks. As long as I live, I'll hear the birds and the winds and the waterfalls sing. I'll interpret the rocks and hear the language of flood and storm and avalanche. I'll make the acquaintance of the wild gardens and the glaciers, and get as near to the heart of this world as I could. And so I did. I sauntered from rock to rock, from grove to grove, from stream to stream, and whenever I met a new plant, I would sit down beside it for a minute or a day to make its acquaintance, hear what it had to tell. I asked the boulders, where had they been and whither were they going? And when night found me, there I camped. I took no more heed to save time or to make haste than did the trees or the stars. This is true freedom. Those are the words of naturalist John Muir. I wish us all a good day, productive meeting, and again, welcome to Highlands College.
Thank you very much, Dean Garrick. We appreciate those words, and we also appreciate the great work of your faculty, your staff, and your students to make these next 2 days productive for us. If I could ask for all of the students to stand and be recognized, anyone who is a student in the Montana University system at this point, to stand and be recognized. You are the reason why we come together, and all of us have the opportunity to serve. Thank you very much for choosing the Montana University system. It is a very exciting day today because since January of 2012, there was about a 4-month time period where we had a full board. And I am very happy to announce that today we have a 7-member Board of Regents. And I would like to thank Ms. O'Brien, who joins us from the Governor's Office today, for her efforts in making that happen. And we look forward to working with our 2 new regents. Before I make those introductions, though, I would like to express to everyone that Regent Tuss does send his regrets that he is not able to join us. He is traveling, but looks forward to seeing all of you in the months to come. I'm very glad to welcome to the table our student regent, Zach Rogala, and I will read his biography as he presented it to me. After graduating from Darby High School, Rogala received an undergraduate degree in philosophy from Montana State University Bozeman in 2010. While in Bozeman, he served as a student senator with ASMSU and was president of the MSU Philosophy Society. He has worked as a skiing professional for the last decade in Germany, Chile, Montana, and is currently employed at the Yellowstone Club. He worked as a whitewater wilderness guide in Idaho with Holiday River Expeditions for 7 years, was a fellow with the Burton K. Wheeler Center for Public Policy, and served as a Sean Michael Miles Fellow for Senator Baucus in Washington, D.C. Additionally, he released the Montana Ethic Project, a 34-part online series featuring presentations from Montana leaders on issues pertinent to the state. Zach is a first-year law student at the University of Montana. We welcome you to the table and look so very forward to working with you, Zach. I am also very pleased to welcome to the table our newest regent, Miss Fran Albrecht. Fran is a native of Great Falls. She serves as the executive director of Watson's Children's Shelter in Missoula, a private nonprofit that welcomes Montana children who have experienced physical or sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, or family crisis. Albrecht is an adjunct instructor teaching nonprofit administration and public service and advanced nonprofit administration at the University of Montana. She earned a Bachelor of Arts with double majors in psychology and sociology from Gonzaga University and a Master of Education in Early Childhood and Family Studies from MSU Billings, both with honors. Albrecht has served in various leadership positions, including past president of the Rotary Club of Missoula, Missoula Chamber of Commerce Board, First Interstate Bank System Foundation Board, Leadership Missoula, Missoula Public Schools 21st Century Model for Change, and others. She continues to serve with the Chamber of Ambassadors, Nonprofit Leadership Alliance Advisory Council, Missoula Nonprofit Network Steering Committee, Loyola Sacred Heart Foundation Board, and First Interstate Bank Advisory Board. Albrecht has been recognized as a nonprofit leader, providing advisement to nonprofits in varying stages of development, and is frequently requested for advisement with capital campaigns, board development, public relations, leadership, strategic planning, and effective marketing. Fran is married to Chris Albrecht, a Montana Tech graduate, and they reside in Missoula with children Jane and Tommy. Fran, we are so excited to welcome you to the table as well and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
I would also like to welcome to the table Superintendent of Public Instruction, Denise Juneau. We will hear from her later on in the morning, but it is very nice to have you with us. And I would like to make another official introduction of the Governor's Education Policy Advisor. She has been with the Governor for a long time, but we as a board have not met in such a large setting. So I would like for all of you to meet Shannon O'Brien. And we have Pete Donovan, who's the Executive Director of the Montana Board of Public Education. Welcome, Pete. And I also see Terry Kendrick here from the Office of Public Instruction, who works with the superintendent on special projects. So welcome, Terry. Good to see you here as well. And at this time, I would look to the campuses for their respective introductions. And if we could, before I do that, I would ask Dr. Seck to make a 2-year introduction.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner, it's my pleasure to introduce today the new president of Dawson Community College, Dr. Mike Simon. Mike comes to us as a campus president from the Colorado Mountain Community College System in Leadville, Colorado. Also, Miles Community College has a new academic vice president, Dr. Ted Hanley. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Seck. At this point, I would turn it over to the campuses for further introductions. Madam President.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm delighted today to introduce our Vice President for Student Success, Dr. Robert Marley. If he looks familiar to you, it's because Dr. Marley served with excellence for 13 years as Dean of the College of Engineering at Montana State University. Last year, he had been chosen by the American Council on Education to be part of a very select group of faculty members to participate in their Fellows Program, which is the most prestigious leadership program in the nation, building that next generation of university leaders. So we're very happy to have now Vice President Marley with us. Also, please join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Gore. Dr. Paul Gore is the Director of Institutional Research at University of Utah. And we are very fortunate this year because he is in this year's ACE's cohort, and he has chosen Montana State University as his institution to spend 1 year with us learning about Montana State University, our 4 campuses, our 7 agricultural centers, extension. I have also asked the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education to open the doors to Paul, and even last night I said, I'm sure, Paul, that if I ask President Armstrong, he will be happy to welcome you for 1 day at the University of Missoula. So welcome, Dr. Gore.
Dean Bingham has an introduction to make.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm ecstatic, really, to be able to introduce to you Denise Rung over here, who is our new academic dean. She comes to us from Atlanta at a small 4-year liberal arts college, and we're very happy to have her here, and I think she's going to do some great things, both collaboratively between 2- and 4-year colleges.
Thank you. Welcome.
Madam Chair and members of the board, It's my great pleasure to introduce Montana State University Northern's new Dean of Student Engagement, Ms. Kim Watson. Kim, if you'd stand, please. Kim brings to Northern 20 years of progressive experience in student life and in student engagement, and was most recently the Director of Residence Life at Maryville University in St. Louis. So we're very pleased to have someone of Kim's caliber with us, and we're looking forward to the opportunities that she'll bring to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Members of the board, I'm pleased to introduce Aaron Klinging-Smith, who has taken over the reins from Dan Carter in the Office of University Relations. Dan.
Thank you. And if that concludes our introductions, let me welcome you all aboard once again, and let me tell you that you're coming into the Montana University system at a very exciting time. We have a number of initiatives moving forward on behalf of the students that we serve, and to that end, I am going to turn the mic over to the commissioner and to the deputy commissioner, who have a very exciting announcement to make.
Madam Chair, thank you. I received a couple phone calls this morning that I rudely jumped out of our faculty breakfast and took, but they were exciting calls. And the numbers displayed as those that are hard to ignore. The first being from our Senator Max Baucus, and he'd recently received a call from Secretary Perez from the Department of Labor, and is now giving us the go-ahead to share some exciting news. The second was from the governor of the great state of Montana, who is also sharing the news on behalf of Montana and the department Pam Busey serves in, who's been very instrumental in helping make this all work too. So to the two senators and to our governor, we greatly thank you for the support, and I will turn it over to Mr. Seck to tell us a few of the details about the announcement.
Thank you, Commissioner. I cannot express what I'm feeling right now very, very adequately because this grant, the U.S. Department of Labor State Workforce Development Training Consortium grant for $25 million is going to transform two-year education in Montana and its ability to provide workforce development responsiveness in the areas of energy and advanced manufacturing unlike anything that's ever happened in Montana before. And many, many thanks, as the commissioner said, to Senator Baucus, Senator Tester, Congressman Daines, Governor Bullock, Commissioner Busey, for their support. I would also like to add the incredible work that the campuses did. Great Falls College will be the lead campus for this initiative. Dean Wolf and her staff, particularly Jerry Pullman, Mel Lehman, did a magnificent job. Flathead Valley Community College was a senior supporting partner with this initiative. President Karras and her work with Matt Springer, Brad Eldridge, and their staff. MSU Billings City College was a very lead supporting partner. Lisa Screener, Liz Tooley. The Department of Labor and Industry, we sat down with Pam Busey on day one, 2 months before the SGA was announced, and said, we're going to go after this. And Pam and her staff and the governor's staff rolled up their sleeves and said, let's get at it. How can we help you? So many thanks to Pam and Commissioner Busey and the state apprenticeship programs and job service programs. This is absolutely huge. Just a couple of details on the grant. 13 Montana two-year colleges are participating in this. As I mentioned, Great Falls College will be the lead college under the leadership of Dean Wolf. the 10 two-year colleges in Montana, the 10 public two-year colleges, and 2 tribal colleges who are partnering with this include Great Falls College, Montana State University, Fort Peck Community College, Montana State University Northern, City College at MSU Billings, Gallatin College at Montana State University, Missoula College at University of Montana, Bitterroot College at University of Montana, Helena College at University of Montana, Highlands College of Montana Tech, Flathead Valley Community College, Dawson Community College, Miles Community College, and Little Bighorn College. Just a couple of details from the grant, which the title of the grant is Strengthening Workforce Alignment in Montana's Manufacturing and Energy Industries. The grant, one of the things that I think was a selling point of this grant is that before we even hit send on the submission, we had lined up 57 partnerships with business and industry, and we had signed MOUs with those 57 partners. Those partners have made a commitment to us that they will be at the table with respect to curriculum design, they'll be at the table with respect to executing these grants. The deans, CEOs, and presidents of our two-year colleges were the ones who established those partnerships and are frankly the ones who are responsible for this grant. And before I continue, I think they deserve a warm round of applause. The public workforce partners with this grant include the Montana Department of Labor and Industry, the Montana State Workforce Investment Board, the Montana Registered Apprenticeship Program, the Montana Regional One-Stop Centers in Billings, Glendive, Kalispell, Helena, Libby, Miles City, Bozeman, Missoula, Sidney, Great Falls, Havre, Butte, and Hamilton. And other key partners include the Governor's Office of Economic Development, the Montana Chamber of Commerce, and previous TAA-CCT grantees in Pennsylvania, Bismarck State College, Clackamas Community College, and of course our own Flathead Valley Community College. Just a couple of things that I could talk for hours about this, and I won't, but just a couple of things that I think really speak to the innovation of this grant and how this is going to change what we do and how we do it are words like accelerated learning, industry-driven, competencies, blended learning, block scheduling, industry-recognized credentials, certificate attainment, retention strategies, and stackable credentials, and of course, job placement, which is where we will be working with the Department of Labor. The program involves certificates and training in manufacturing, industrial machining, welding, metal fabrication, industrial maintenance, industrial electronics, diesel technology, heavy equipment operators, energy technicians, and of course, commercial driver's license training. Commissioner, Madam Chair, members of the board, this fits in like a glove with the work and what we've heard over the last 2 days at Senator Baucus's Economic Summit. So I'll conclude there.
Members of the board, I would just like to say, you know, we actually have had a few unsuccessful attempts at this grant in the past. And about a year ago, we sat down, John and I, and said, let's figure out how to do this. And through the help of the governor's office and Pam Busey and others, they really rolled up their sleeves and recruited a team. And through the help of our senators, we have a successful bid now of $25 million that will come to the great state of Montana, and I'd like to thank John and his crew for making that happen for us. If I could, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Shannon O'Brien for a moment to make a few comments on behalf of the governor's office.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. This is a great day for the state of Montana. And I do have a message from the governor he would like to share in congratulations. I am committed to higher education and workforce development. This grant represents an incredible opportunity for Montana's public two-year colleges and tribal college partners to serve thousands of individuals over the next 4 years in the areas of energy and advanced manufacturing workforce development. Montana's two-year colleges are at the heart of providing responsive workforce development opportunities. This grant is built on partnerships. Deputy Commissioner John Seck and his two-year CEO colleagues, along with Director Pam Busey and her team at the Department of Labor and Industry, John Rogers in the Department of Economic Development, and many others collaborated with 57 industry partnerships as part of this grant. Many congratulations to all of those who worked very hard to get this done. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Madam Chair, happy day for us in the Montana University system. One last thank you to the governor and his staff and all the work that went in there, and one last thanks to Senator Baucus, who walked up and down the halls in D.C. to make sure Montana got a good, fair look in this process, and we appreciate that. This will serve us well, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, Ms. O'Brien. And if you would please express our appreciation on behalf of the board to the governor. We greatly appreciate his efforts, and on behalf of to our congressional delegation, we say thank you to you as well. And it is indeed a happy day for us, but more importantly, a happy day for the students that we get to serve. Very exciting indeed. I just have a few other comments before I turn it back over to the commissioner for his commissioner's report. I'm very pleased that we as a board and that we as a system are embracing the national goal and the governor's goal of the 60% of Montanans with a credential or a degree, and the news that we just got will certainly help us in that regard. And I look forward to continued efforts to help us get there. We had a great conversation with faculty before we came to the table today, and I think that the conversations around performance funding continue to bear fruit and continue to be constructive and student-centered. Additionally, this summer we had a formal announcement of our partnership with Complete College America. That partnership and the networking that that partnership provides will indeed enable us as a system to move forward to attain that goal of 60%. And I look now to the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I look forward to working with her and the K-12 schools in growing dual enrollment, which is a key component in decreasing the time to degree, decreasing the cost for our students. And additionally, I know that there's a number of student success initiatives taking place all across our campuses, and we will hear more about that in the ARSA presentations this morning from Ron Muffet from the Commissioner's Office. Next, I'd like to express a great deal of appreciation on behalf of this board to Regent Rogala, to former student Regent Joe Teal, and to all of the faculty and staff and the administrators who attended and helped make the the sexual assault summit that took place this summer at Montana State University a success. It was not lost on me that there was significant attendance at this event within a week of school starting on our campuses. And yet the conversations that came out of that summit were extraordinary, and I look forward to hearing the charge and giving a charge to the board from that summit, and it sounds like that will come to us in November. And then finally, this summer we had the opportunity to come together at the governor's call with our K-12 partners. The members of the Board of Public Education and the members of the Board of Regents sat down at the table, and we discussed with the governor where we believed our education priorities should be as we serve Montana's students best. And it was a very exciting conversation that too bore a lot of fruit. And some of the most exciting things that came out of it were how we can grow these community business partnerships. And we just heard how we have the opportunity and now the resources to make that happen more successfully by design across the state of Montana. Another piece of the conversation that day was about how to increase and grow the STEM conversation and grow STEM opportunities for all of our students, not just at the post-secondary level, but at the K-12 level, as well as we provide dual enrollment opportunities. And then finally, one of the charges that circled around the table from members of the Board of Regents was to grow our efforts in research across our campuses, across the Montana University system. So we have a lot on our plate, and as I indicated to those folks a little while ago that I welcomed aboard, we have a lot on our plate in the name of the students that we serve, and I look forward to working with the folks at the table, everyone in the room, and to all of the folks who are back on the campuses today making things happen for our students in rolling out each of these initiatives. Thank you for all you do. We look forward to today, tomorrow, and to a great school year. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, and with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Madam Chair, thank you. We didn't know we were going to have quite the announcements we did, so we're a little behind, but we will run through the reports. One of our things to talk about was the possibility of obtaining the grant, and so we could probably cut that a little short and make the whole thing work out. Madam Chair, I just want to touch on a few things that sort of happened over the course of the summer, and then we'll elaborate a bit more with some comments from deputy commissioners. Obviously, yesterday was or the last couple days, pretty interesting day in Montana with the Bacchus Summit. One of the things that I would just relay is that nearly every speaker and every conversation that was happened talked about the importance of education and higher education in particular, and its impact on the economy and where it can go. It also encouraged us to work together with our partners in K through 12, and that's certainly a message that we heard loud and clear, and Superintendent Juneau spoke to the bridges that we're building and the partnerships that we're trying to create to move Montana forward for all of its students on the P20 horizon. And so lots of good things happening. Very encouraged from my spot at every conversation, including the need for, the demand for higher education to be involved in it. And so we look forward to meeting those needs across the state. We also are going to hear a bit more about it in John's committee, but we did a tour this summer of some energy resources in Montana. And again, at those stops and meetings along the way with partners from industry, talked about working more closely with higher education, and I certainly pledge from my office to see that we do that. The need to build bridges, to create more internship opportunities, to make sure that we're aligned and working close together so the skill sets that we produce match the skill sets that they demand. We will work to see those things happen and that transition is made. We're going to talk a bit about Complete College America and performance funding. I just want to say thank you to Tyler Trevor and the crew that he put together, the task force that spent every Friday afternoon. Now, why they picked that in the middle of summer, I'm not sure, but that was the schedule and they stuck to it. And regardless of where we go with Complete College America and performance funding, the conversations that we've been needing to have for some time are happening, and that's important. The end product will be a result of hard work and collaboration between the system and the faculty within the system, and it'll serve Montana well. But the important piece to me is that we're having the conversations that we desperately need to have to meet the workforce needs, to meet the economic challenges, to continue seeing this country's vitality and economic growth prosper. And so I thank those guys for the work that they've been doing there. Our legal staff, HR staff, spent a fair amount of the summer negotiating contracts with our union partners. I would like to extend our thanks to all the union members and union partners that met us at the table to have good conversations over the summer. Certainly some of those are still ongoing. We have some ready to come to the board today, and we will work hard to see that we get them all to the board as soon as we possibly can. Also like to welcome Neil to what now transpired over the summer is the removal of interim in front of his name and a transition into this role. I actually met with the Student Affairs Council yesterday, and I feel like over the course, at least my time on the board, which is remarkably now approaching or over 8 years, I felt like that we struggled a little bit in that position to cover all that is under its care, which is academic research and student affairs. Certainly one of the tasks that we've handed Neil as we took interim off was to make sure that that was well covered. We are proposing to make a few changes that will help us better to do that. One of the conversations that we had at our retreat is an emphasis on research and building a brighter future in Montana. With that in mind, we will work to strengthen our involvement with research from the Commissioner's Office. I also feel like most of the conversations that we're having, whether it's time to degree or from positive conversations to challenges that we face at the campus levels, have to do with our students, our student affairs, the progress that we need to make. And so we've put a lot more emphasis on that too, and some of the changes we'll make at the cabinet level hopefully will also support that. So we have a robust effort coming forward from the Commissioner's Office to see that the heart and soul, academia and student affairs and student engagement are met by the Commissioner's Office and through the Deputy Commissioner's work. The last couple things, I guess, also like to thank Mick and his crew that spent a long summer ending the biennial fiscal year, which is always quite a challenge as we roll everything up from a campus level to a system level and need signed off at the state level. And so that kept them very busy this summer, and we appreciate the efforts there. A few years ago, we talked about with board members the notion that we as a state and the employees of the Montana University system may have the opportunity to have as an option for us health care provided through the state health clinics. And we don't have that done today, but I want to tell you that we have renewed engagement on both sides to see that happen, and we're making a lot of progress. We've taken to the IUBC Benefits Council our proposal. We've worked closely with Dan Villa and the Budget Office and others within the Governor's Office to make some opportunities available, and we're pretty close to getting to a spot where we could open up the state health clinics to our employees as well, and I think that would serve our employees very well. So we're hopeful that we'll have some progress made on that even before we meet again. Again, we need to involve our partners in the union, our faculty, our students, or not students, but associates that are all served under the plan, and we will make sure that those conversations move forward in a collaborative way. And then the last thing I would touch on is, as mentioned at the summit, we did meet yesterday, the governor included, and Larry Simpkins, Bill Johnstone with the Main Street Montana project. Shannon was there. We had a good conversation, and again, I would just say that as they went around the state asking what's important to Montana and what's important to the Montana economy, they reported back to us yesterday that every community had education on its list, and every community had an emphasis on higher education on its list, and the need for us to work closely with our K through 12 partners to make sure that we're doing what we can for Montana students and their families. And so we will work closely with the Main Street project over the next few months to make sure that we embed and imbue what we can for that project from higher education moving forward. So, Madam Chair, with that, we'd like to ask that Tyler do a quick update on Complete College America and performance funding.
Thank you.
Hey, John, maybe it is on. Thank you, Commissioner, members of the board, good morning. For the record, my name is Tyler Trevor. I feel like I need to say that with some new regents, although I've had a chance to meet most of you. I want to give you an update on Complete College Montana, and I'm really excited and really kind of feel privileged to do this in conjunction with the governor's office on August 19th. And Amy, if you could go to our homepage, I'll show you the link on how to get there. Scroll down a little bit. Governor Bullock
I
committed
appreciate you
Montana.
correcting me on that, but I did just get one of those from the governor's policy advisor, Complete College Montana. Sorry.
If you say it enough, he'll catch on. I found out. Notice prominently on the MUS, the Montana University System homepage, we have a link to Complete College Montana. And so go ahead and click that, Amy. On August 19th, Governor Bullock committed Montana to the Complete College Montana initiative. And so what is that? Complete College Montana is a byproduct, of course, of Complete College America. And it's an initiative with laser focus on increasing the number of completions, higher education degrees and credentials that are earned by Montanans. And it directly relates to what I think is one of the most prominent statements that the governor made in his State of the State, which is it is his goal and our goal to increase the percentage of Montanans who have a higher education credential from 40% now to 60% 10 years from now. And this initiative is our answer from the Montana University system on how we are going to move that dial. We have this website comprised here for to grow as we move forward. I have an overview presentation that would take about 2 or 3 minutes for me to click through just to get us all on the same page as to what is it that Complete College America is asking of us, and what is it, of course, in our own Montana fashion, that we are going to immediately focus on to move the dial and create our strategies. So, Amy, if you could click on the overview presentation, not that one. There you go. So scroll down one page. This initiative, Complete College America, is a nationwide nonprofit effort that includes 34 other states. We are the 34th state to join. It's been around a bit. We have an alliance of states that we will work with and share best practices with and learn from, and also describe some of our strategies with. So it's really a nationwide effort under the President's initiative to increase the percent of the nation with a higher education credential, and now Montana is a part of that. So what does Complete College America basically lay out there for us in terms of essential steps? What do states need to do? Number one, set a state goal. Well, we got that one. When we heard the governor make this announcement, it was clear that this was a route that we needed to go. Number two, uniformly measure progress and success. This effort is about laying out very consistent measures, holding them up to the public, and identifying progress. And I'll hit on that toward the end here. Number three, shift to performance funding. Just happens to be something that we're working on. So this is, in a sense, an umbrella initiative that's going to include items and initiatives that we're already working on. Next slide. Number four, a topic very near and dear to many members of the board, and that is reduce time to degree and accelerate success. On-time completion plans, getting students to enroll in a full load, utilizing incentive-based financial aid, eliminating unnecessary course-taking patterns. There's a whole network of information related to this. Inside this presentation, it would take you out to strategies that are recommended by Complete College America that are very specific. Number five, transform remediation, an area that obviously we have dedicated a lot of time. I'll hit on that when we talk about our own strategies. And finally, restructure delivery for today's students. And just what does that mean? One of their primary suggestions, maybe not for every campus, but is to employ block scheduling. So we in Montana are leaders in this, and in fact, Western is in the process of talking with Complete College America to get their word out to other states on how to do just what they've done. So moving forward, what is it that we are going to focus on immediately? Obviously, implementing performance-based funding. We talked over breakfast with the faculty. I'll show you in terms of a brief update what we've done over the summer here in 2 seconds. But the next one is reform developmental education. If you remember back to the May board meeting, we received a report on a task force of folks that worked on this from the university system over the course of last year with 7 or 8 very specific recommendations. We will spend this next year working to implement those recommendations. Next slide. A topic very near and dear to the heart of the chair of the board and the rest of us is increased dual enrollment. We received funds from the legislature to do just that. This board has reduced tuition, cut it in half for all students that enroll in dual enrollment, as well as eliminate fees. So we've made some progress there, but we need to do a better job of getting that word out and making parents and students fully aware of the opportunities, as well as expanding those opportunities. The fourth bleeds into guided pathways, not just at the 2-year level, which we have a very substantial head start there with our Big Sky pathways, but articulating those 2 to 4 year pathways kind of on the back of Common Course numbering. It's one thing to have courses common numbered, but it's to have those courses count in each program at the 2-year and 4-year level and creating a map for those students through degree audit systems, such as the audit system that MSU Bozeman has just implemented. I suggest that you all take a look at this website that they've created for their degree audit system. Really a fantastic way for students to identify what their courses they've already taken and how they count to any other of the majors at MSU and throughout the MSU system, side of the system. Next slide. Finally, the one that I find most intriguing, which is measure progress and outcomes. And do this in a very consistent fashion. We will adopt the Complete College America metrics. We will use these metrics as the concrete, I would say, or the menu that we will begin to look at for performance-based funding. Not to say that these would be the only metrics, but we will have data on every one of these metrics for all campuses. And what I find kind of the neatest thing is that we have a centralized data warehouse that has the capability of calculating pretty much every one of these. And we have data over a 10-year period of time. For the 2-year campuses, for the 4-year campuses, we're going to be able to compare to the 34 other states in Complete College America. These metrics will be split out by Pell students, by transfer students, by part-time students, by age, by gender, by ethnicity. It will say to the state, the campuses, and the public, this is what the university system measures on an annual basis. This is what we want you to hold us accountable for in moving the dial toward increasing completions. And just by the way, Senate Joint Resolution 13, passed by the 2013 legislature, tells us to do just that and return to them in the 2015 legislative session with the answers to every one of these by campus and comparability throughout the nation. So we are primed to answer Senate Joint Resolution 13 and really raise the level of information that we have for the Board of Regents and the university system to the next level. This is obviously a part that I'm very excited about and working on, and you'll see progress on this, and I'll update you at each board meeting as these data unfold, and we have them available on our website. Next slide, last slide. The Complete College America state team. We are required by the Complete College Montana state team. We are required by Complete College America to submit a state team based out of these categories. We have the liaison, myself, the state higher education officer, Clay Christian. We have the governor's education policy advisor, of course, Shannon O'Brien. We have the 2 4-year leaders in our university system, President Ingstrom, President Cruzado. We have Deputy Commissioner John Secht representing 2-year higher education. And then we have a very distinguished senator, a really great guy who led Senate Joint Resolution 13 in Senator Taylor Brown. What we're going to do with this group? Well, we know at least one thing. At the end of October, we're going to meet in Salt Lake with the other 34 states, and we're going to hear directly from Complete College America how we can work to energize this effort. I think we've already got a great start. I've said enough. If there are any questions from the board, I'd be glad to answer those.
Questions or comments from members of the board? Regent Robinson.
Madam Chair, thank you. I have one question because this is one of the first times I've heard in the presentation that, and I'm glad to hear in the presentation that there's a time frame that we're looking at too, which is by 2023, 10 years. Is that what the governor has projected?
Madam Chair, Regent Robinson, yes, the governor stated 10 years. The president stated by 2025. We're all in the same time frame here of getting the job done in a hurry in about a 10-year frame. So yes.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Ms. O'Brien.
I just wanted you to clarify the cost to the state.
Madam Chair, Policy Advisor O'Brien, who is well aware of the cost to the state, but I will say it, zero, nothing. What the cost is in man hours, and what we see this is as a collection of things that we're already doing, that we're driving in one single direction now, and that is toward the goal that the governor set out for the state of Montana.
Thank you. Great point. Regent Rogala.
Tyler, I know this is on your radar, but just try and seek to include students and faculty on CCMT as much as possible.
Thank you, Regent Rogala. Superintendent Juneau.
Hi. I guess I would just have a similar request too, because it's focusing on college completion and dual enrollment and developmental education. I think it's important to have a K-12 representative somewhere on that list and at least be kept in the loop, because we have been trying to build bridges and I just don't see that reflected in that group. So thanks.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any further questions or comments? Thank you. Then I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Commissioner.
Madam Chair, that ends the Commissioner's report. We can move on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trevor. We appreciate that conversation and great questions, great input to that conversation. At this point then, in the absence of Regent Tuss, I will chair the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee agenda. And we have an action agenda, and the action pieces will be moved forward to tomorrow, but we will have discussion and introduction of each of them. Then we have the consent and a few information pieces this morning. So at this time then I would turn to Deputy Commissioner Moisey for a discussion on action item A.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The first item on our action list are the level 2 items for approval. And I wanted to kind of give a brief overview of the level 1, level 2 process as we have a couple of new regents. And really as we look at these academic changes, whether they're additional programs or terminations or moratoriums, we look at a couple of different broad guidelines, and those are really at how well these changes or how much these changes affect an institution's approved mission, and then also really looking at the relationship between the resources that are needed and available and the benefit of those programs, and that helps us determine whether these are level 1 or level 2 changes. So level 1 changes obviously are changes, academic program changes that really don't affect the mission of the campuses or take substantial resources. And those level 1 changes, and we'll get to those later on in the informational section, those are approved by the commissioner. The level 2 program changes, though, are substantial changes on a campus, and we have 4 of those today, one up at Flathead Valley Community College, and then 3 on the MSU Bozeman campus. And I can, if you have specific questions on each of these items, we could ask the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Flathead Valley Community College and at MSU Bozeman to address specific questions.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the board on any of the level 2 items? Thank you. So with that, then we can move on to item B.
Item B is a board policy revision. This is Board Policy 406. And that policy, in case you don't remember the specific language with that one, is ownership of electronic course material. And this is a board policy that, or a change that was brought to us by faculty within the university system. As you're aware, our online course offerings are growing rapidly and have for the last few years. And the current board policy talks about the ownership of that intellectual property in terms of those course materials. So typically, in a traditional delivery, the faculty member has ownership of the course materials and the classes they put together. This board policy change is trying to use that same ownership model for electronic course material, and faculty were concerned with the current policy, which splits the ownership 50-50 with the system. A lot of input came from faculty on this, with a lot of input came from the chief academic officers, and this is the revised policy. Really, the meat of this is that unless there are substantial MUS resources devoted to the development of course materials, or if the course development is part of a sponsored program, the course materials are owned by the individual faculty members. And that's the meat really of what's in there.
Thank you very much. A very important and timely conversation as we're doing so much work online. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Okay, then we will move to item C then.
This is policy 504.5, and this is graduate scholarships. This is a board policy that's been in place for some time now, and the university system has gone through its usual audit process, and the auditors asked about the relevance of this policy. Really, what this policy is trying to accomplish is being accomplished and utilized in several other board policies, and the request came from the campuses to remove this policy as it's no longer being used.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments on item C from members of the board? Thank you. And then our final action item on this agenda is the honorary degree from MSU Bozeman, and we as a board did agree to move this forward in executive committee quite some time ago. This would be for Montana State University's fall commencement, and I would ask that we be very cautious in regards to the identity. So with that, for that conversation, then I will look to the president of MSU.
Yes, good morning. Madam Chair and members of the board, Montana State University is delighted to elevate to your consideration that we grant an honorary degree recipient to Mr. Philip Eikberg, a native of Havre, Montana. As you know very well, Mr. Eikberg is one of the foremost pianists and composers in the nation, and we are absolutely delighted that he has these ties back to Montana State University. The honorary degree is, of course, the highest recognition that the Board of Regents grant upon individuals who serve as an inspiration to our graduates. And we are convinced that Mr. Eikberg will be such an inspiration if we have an opportunity to present him with this degree in our fall commencement, which we are already in full planning mode, and instead of a podium, he has asked for a piano if the Board of Regents so desires to grant this honor on him.
Thank you, Madam President, and I look forward to the vote on this tomorrow, as the biography is quite impressive, and look forward to that vote tomorrow. So I wanted to make sure, though, that I did not ruin Montana State University or the president's surprise. So now we have some some very important items on the level 1 memorandums as far as the consent. And for that conversation, I will look to Mr. Moisey, who will ask Chancellor Limbaugh to come to the microphone to speak to some of the items on this consent agenda. So for that, Dr. Moisey, I'll look to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. These are the level 1 changes. These are informational to the board. Typically, these are, I don't want to say minor changes, but these are changes on a campus that don't affect the mission of the campus or take substantial resources on the campus, although in collective they might. And as you look through these, you'll notice that there are a fair number of terminations and moratoriums at MSU Northern, and I had asked Chancellor Limbaugh to address really the differences in what those terminations and moratorium, but more specifically to talk about the process that led up to the 30-some items listed here.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Moisey. For the benefit of some of the folks who have not had heard about this process, I was asked to give a very succinct synopsis of what we did at Northern. Northern had a particular challenge in that it had a very large slate of program offerings, but we were finding that as we began looking at ways to increase our enrollment, many of those programs had significantly or abysmally low enrollment or no enrollments for several years. And we knew that in order for an institution like Northern to be successful, we had to identify niche markets. We had to say, what are we best at in terms of our location, our facilities, our expertise of our faculty, and our mission within the Montana University system. So I charged the academic affairs leadership last fall with undertaking an academic program prioritization review. And I want to give full credit right now to Dr. Rosalind Templeton and her academic leadership. Rosalind, if you'll stand, please. Rosalind took the proverbial bull by the horns and developed a process with the full involvement and collaboration of our faculty based on Dixon's seminal work, prioritizing academic programs and services. So basically, this was a faculty initiative. The criteria were developed by the faculty. The review process was developed by the faculty. And what you see before you is a result of a 6-step program evaluation. If you would like more fuller details on it, I'll certainly glad to relinquish the microphone to Dr. Templeton, who can give you some of the gory details if you're so inclined. But what came out of this was out of all the programs that were evaluated, I accepted 81% of the recommendations. So what you see in front of you are faculty recommendations. Faculty said, we have programs we are no longer interested in providing, we should not provide, or the train has left the proverbial station and we no longer need to provide those programs because there is no longer a need for it. So this is a first step in positioning the institution. What you see here is housekeeping. The ones that are terminated are for the most part, ones that were put in moratorium several years ago and we're cleaning things up. The ones that are in moratorium are the ones we've said we are willing to take a look at, but right now we are not recruiting students to them. They're not being listed in any of our admissions or advising information. The only exception from the announcement that I made back in May are the secondary education programs. Because there was some community concern about the decision or my decision to terminate the secondary education programs, and there are 6 of them, I agreed to shift that to moratorium and then hold a series of public meetings in Havre, which we'll be scheduling this fall, to listen to community concerns. I certainly understand the role of Northern to provide education to North Central Montana, but you also all saw the data in terms of the number of graduates that have been turned out up there over the last 11 years. And we had some very hard decisions to make, but out of respect for community concern, we will certainly continue that conversation. So this is the first step in a process of Northern positioning itself in a way where we can meet a very important enrollment goal that I've set, which we'll talk about at the presentations later today. I'm asking the board to approve our level 1 memoranda request because our next step will be to identify strategies by which we actively promote 19 specific programs that we've identified that we can grow and we can excel in. And we've recommended 3 new programs to grow that are particularly appropriate for our institution. So that's why the provost now has writer's cramp from filling out all of the level 1 memoranda. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Chancellor Limbaugh, for the leadership that you provided in this and the leadership of your team in these conversations. I know that they cannot be easy. And so I look forward to hearing how these community meetings and forums progress. And once again, thanks for your leadership. Regent Buchanan.
Chancellor Limbaugh, thank you. Reflecting on the word prioritization, and I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, the board that was here had that as a priority that we really tried to instill as a tool, based on the premise that in a state of about 1 million people with limited resources, not every institution can be everything to all people. And to take the strong efforts that you're taking here to eliminate things that most are more accurately reflect the mission and the direction you're going. By the way, I read this piece that you left on our desk and seeing a mission statement that specifically identifies program prioritization. I think that the board members that were here 4 and 5 years ago that really tried to put this out there as a tool would be so pleased. I'm so pleased to see that a campus has really grabbed this and used this as a tool. And I think your leadership, as already seen in the demonstration and growth and retention that you're having under your leadership, empowers you to continue to charge forward with this. And I think that the way you're doing it by including faculty and including the community is the only way to be successful. But I can't thank you enough from the members of the board 4 and 5 years ago that tried so hard to say, this state has limited resources. We've got a lot of physical footprints around the state. You've got to fill a niche, and you've got to be very good at filling that niche if you intend to continue to attract students. And so I congratulate you and look forward to seeing how this rolls out. I really think it's going to pay strong dividends for you and the campus up there at Northern. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. And I do want to emphasize that in the spirit of true leadership, I asked some folks to do, and then I got out of the way. And so this was, I have to give full credit to the committed faculty, the leadership of academic affairs, who spent long hours talking about this. I was not involved in any way until they submitted their report because I felt very strongly faculty had to make certain decisions. So again, I want to recognize how important the faculty leadership was on this. And thank you for your support. It's greatly appreciated. Other questions?
Thank you. Regent Robinson.
I too wanted to congratulate you on such a bold move. It is difficult and involved in taking the steps in the way you have and are by including the faculty and giving them the empowerment, by including the community and circling back in order to have those discussions, because I'm sure it is painful to make those type of hard decisions. One question I do have, and it may not be for you or it might be, but I think for those that have been involved within the university system for a while here, when have we done this in the past to take a look at courses in this manner, and have we evaluated to this point and made cuts in the past? Have we done this, or is this something that's a first for us?
Regent Robinson, each of the campuses goes through an annual program review process where this isn't done on such a holistic, large scale, and so it's typically on a cycle of about every 7 years. Programs go through that. So if you look at one of the larger campuses, that's still a significant number of programs. But again, a similar process where programs are really looking at what is their purpose and resources and effectiveness and efficiency and relevance, and external evaluators come in and review those programs and give recommendations to the campuses. And actually in the November meeting we present those program reviews from around the system, and you'll see in that typically that there will be discussions about either having additional resources available for those programs or perhaps realignment of those programs in terms of additional degree areas, or maybe dropping a degree emphasis or something like that. So that does occur, but I think the program prioritization process that Chancellor Limbaugh is talking about is doing that all at once, and you know, it is a very bold way of doing that. But the other campuses do that evaluative program. It just takes place over a 7-year time period.
Thank you. Regent Kraus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I once cut $1 million out of a $4 million budget, and it was a painful process, and extremely painful process personally and institutionally, and so I appreciate how painful this can be, this kind of process. I do look at what has happened with Western, the revitalization at Western, because they had to reinvent themselves and because they had to do what they had to do, and I see this as a huge opportunity for your institution to maybe not do what they did, you understand, but to find a way forward that's different, and I know it sounds like I'm painting lipstick on a pig, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm really saying this is a process that can make you a far more successful institution by focusing in on what you do well and what you can do well, and on opportunities in the future, and not what you did in the past. Not what you did in the past, but to be very future and opportunistic, future-oriented and opportunistic. And so I want to congratulate you on how you handled it, and also on what you've done and how you're facing the future. So thank you very much. You know, this is to an incredible degree, and it's maybe too far, but I'm not sure we need to wait for a budget crisis or 7 years to expire before the other institutions in the university system take a look at this more often. And I know that budget exigencies did affect UM to some extent, and they had to look at some priorities too. But you know, we do that kind of self-examination. I know that the private sector does it all the time, and that we, with our scarce resources, as Regent Buchanan said, need to do this ourselves in all of our institutions. Not to this degree, not to the point where we have to reinvent ourselves, but certainly this is the kind of examination that should be done more than every 7 years, or only at the exigencies of budgets cause us to do. So thank you, and thanks to the community of Havre and to the faculty of your institution.
Well, and thank you all for your continuing support as we go through this. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Regent Buchanan.
Regent Kraus and Regent Robinson, you guys both just asked questions about how often is this done, so I think it's a good time to really quickly put in as a placeholder some of the recent work that was put in place towards prioritization. 4 years ago, Steve Barrett was the chair at the time, and then shifted into Clay. We really tried to put this motion into process with all of the campuses for 2 reasons. One, resource management. The idea is when you terminate this many courses, you're either freeing up human resources, people's time, there's no longer teaching in this program, or it eliminates a position and there's new fiscal resources to invest in new places. And so on a national basis, a few campuses had done very broad, very intense, very hard work, such as Northern is kind of demonstrating they went through. We had 2 or 3 system-wide conversations where experts came in and talked about the tools to do it. And there's 2 things that were found that needed to happen for it to be successful, and Chancellor Limbaugh embraced them. It's got to be bottom-up. We can't say do it. The campus has to recognize this is something we need to do, whether it's for fiscal reasons or for what always drove me was strategic identity. Know who you are. You can't be everything and expect to stand out when you're out there recruiting among all these other institutions for students. You got to be excellent at 1 or 2 things and not dilute your resource and your focus to be okay at a bunch of things, was kind of the opinion that drove our thought process. In response for that, each of the campuses went through, I don't remember what we called it, but I think it was mission review, where they're each requested, this is only a couple of years old, in fact, at the last meeting, I think we saw one of the most recent updates, identify who you are. And I think that the step, if you're interested in continuing this process, is go back to those campuses and say, this is who you said you are. What have you gotten rid of that doesn't fit towards that mission? and where are future investments, because I think Regent Crouch just said it the best. It's hard work to say what we've not been the best at, but the hardest step is focusing on the things that you think you're going to be great at and don't deviate from that focus so that resources and energy from in the campus continue to go there. So just within the last couple of years, all of these campuses have done some of this introspective work. This is the only example where this broad of an integration of this prioritization process has occurred, but we really tried to tee it up. I think the failure we had in getting a little bit more buy-in was we said, go do it. We didn't plant to the campus the idea that it's up to you to identify this as a strategic tool to move there. Not to say that we haven't made some steps here and there. I would like to see a heck of a lot more consolidation from each institution into identifying what the core strengths of those missions are, because I know that in our business, we attract customers because we stand out for one or two reasons. And I think that's true in a lot of private enterprise. I don't know why it would not apply to public education. So a lot of this work has been done. This board gets things done when they say, let's do it. If this is something that needs to be resurfaced, a lot of the learning is very fresh. It's within the last 3 or 4 years, and I would be very excited to see it come back up as a topic that we focus on and continue to try to put out there so that an example of usage like this, I think is going to pay dividends for them. And so it's not that far away from all the leaders, the chancellors, and the folks at the campuses if we wanted to reopen this conversation and continue to push on it. I know that both the presidents of the 2 flagships were embracing it, encouraging it, and really trying to support the idea that as campuses use this as a tool. It's not that far removed from this table's conversation. So keep pushing. I'll support the idea of making this an agenda item if it's something we want to keep pushing. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Rogala.
Withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. I will make sure that the significant dialogue gets relayed to Chair Tuss in this regard. I thank everybody for their input. And again, thank you to you and your team for your great work. Madam President.
Madam Chair and members of the board, I just need to say what an incredible job for this campus. And this started about 18 months ago when Chancellor Limbaugh invited faculty, students, staff, alumni, community members to re-envision Montana State University Northern. And there were great conversations about the mission statement, about the vision, where are we going. I happened to stop at the campus and there were stick-on notes in the library with input and charrette exercises that included ample participation. But now the most important part. Now if we really understand that we can be all these things, how do we make it happen? And congratulations again to the faculty, to the provost. This was a 7-step process that they undertook on their own. And this is so difficult to do. And they stayed on that timeline. They were so committed to it. During the summertime, we had a bus tour from Bozeman. We stopped in Northern, and to a point, deans, vice presidents, alums that were traveling with us, when they saw what Northern was doing, they were in profound admiration. So congratulations, Chancellor, and every faculty member who participated in this.
Thank you, Madam President. So then what we will do is we will move the action item as well as the consent agenda item to tomorrow. And at this point then we'll turn to the information items in the RSA agenda. And for the first item then, item A, the Veteran Success Initiative update, I'll look to Ron Muffick.
Madam Chair, members of the ARS Committee, members of the board, Commissioner Christian, I have a fairly quick update on the Veteran Success Initiative. You may recall it was just over a year ago that we undertook the task of ensuring that the MUS continues to excel as a veterans-friendly system by providing the services and instruction needed for today's veterans to access and complete college. We looked at the information. We have about 2,500 veterans in the system, and we expect that to double. So we said we need to take a look at this, make sure that the veterans have what they need, and look to address their issues. We were fortunate to go through a process of receiving $1 million in one-time only funding for the 2015 biennium from the legislature to address the issues that were discovered or the issues that were vetted by our veterans workforce or our veterans task force or work group. The 2015 funding has some specific items that need to be funded. The ensured dedicated space for veterans is available on all campuses. veterans-oriented academic and student services, peer mentoring, advising, counseling, what the governor's office calls wraparound services. So we're making sure that the veterans have the services that they need in order to access education, enroll, get counseling, learn financial literacy education, and at the campus level. And then in addition to that, are going to develop a system-wide veterans portal, which I'll show you here in a little bit. The entire amount, the $1 million, is going to be allocated to the campuses, so we have a direct impact for those individuals who are on campus. No pun intended, or maybe a pun intended, the boots on the ground, in the trenches, dealing with the students, with the veterans at the campus level. We're also developing the information or website portal at the Commissioner's office, but we're not using any of this funding for that. We use some of the College Access Challenge Grant funding because from the access piece of this. I need to talk to you about the measures of this because these are tied to the funding that we received from the legislature. The service levels across the system will need to be increased to address the unique challenges of the veterans. And then that was our youth system piece. But the measures that came specifically from the legislature is they want to see that enrollment increases of veterans. They want to see retention rates increase. They want to see completions of veterans. And then they want us to also track the workforce placement of veterans in Montana. So one of the issues we had, and that we're going to address as part of this initiative as well, is that we didn't have a lot of data about the veterans. We had some difficulties tracking them. If veterans apply for veterans benefits, we were able to identify them. So we're going to work on having better data as well so that we can show that this funding came into the system and that we made an impact for the veteran students. Next slide, Amy. So we went through the allocation process. We developed the best practices through our Veterans Task Force about a year ago. These best practices include things like a Veterans Advisory Council, dedicated space for veterans. I think we had about 15 different best practices, and you can click on that as well, Amy, if you would. So we looked at the best practices, and then we went through an allocation or an RFP process and asked the campuses to complete a gap analysis so that each campus would look at their veteran services that they're currently providing, compare them to the best practices, and go, okay, where are we short? Where do we need to improve things? Where do we have nothing that we need to address? So each campus submitted a proposal to our office. Our office went through, we reviewed the proposals, and we allocated dollar amounts to each campus. Dollar amounts were allocated based on the number of veterans currently being served at the campuses, and then based on the population of potential veteran students. So, for example, Billings, with the big population, we looked at Billings and said, all right, they've got X number of veterans, but they've also got a veterans population that they can tap into here. So they were allocated additional funding to improve their recruiting of veterans. So next slide, Amy, the allocations, they range from $325,000 at U of M Missoula to $15,000 at Miles City. And quite a range, obviously different sized campuses. It was an amazing process to go through to see how the different campuses address their issues. Miles City, for example, you look at $15,000, they had one of the best proposals because they have, for $15,000 is a lot of money for Miles City to work with their veterans. They came up with a dedicated space. They were just very on point. You could tell that the campuses all went through the gap analysis. And so I have to be very complimentary on what we received in the Commissioner's office related to what the people at the campus level, at the director level of the Veterans Services really came up with. It was really a pleasure to look at what they had. The second piece to this, as I mentioned, is the MUS Veterans website. This is something that we developed at the Commissioner's office. The whole concept here is we want a one-stop shop for veterans to access information. One of the things we did when we were vetting the veterans programs through the work group, the task force, was we went out and looked at a number of the websites. And to not be too harsh, we had a difficult time trying to find on different campus websites what the information was that a veteran needed. So we said, look, right, let's build a one-stop shop website so the veterans can go out and find out what benefits are available to me, what services are available at different campuses, what can I do to transfer credits, what are my online learning options. So we went and put together one website that has all that information. And then we ask campuses as part of their gap analysis and part of their RFP to upgrade their websites to coincide with our website. So if we could just show real quickly, this website, we expect it to go live within a couple weeks. We're working with the governor's office. We've extended the invitation to have them assist us in the promotion of the website. Governor's office was obviously very integral in us receiving this funding. And with the governor's interest and lieutenant governor's interest in his background, it makes total sense for them to participate in just promoting this website so that veterans know that it's out there. Just a couple things we'll click on real quickly. The plan for college, what we try to do is look through this and say, okay, if I'm a veteran, what do I need to know in order to access higher ed? Planning for college, click on this. Here's 10 steps to college success. Or veterans benefits is another button we have up there. They can click on that. They can find out all the veterans benefits that are available to them. The website as it looks right now, a little text heavy. I'm working with our consultant on it, and we're gonna try and have more click boxes, a little bit less text and scrolling. But they are some pretty involved processes, so there needs to be quite a bit of information out there. The third one I just point out on here is the credit transfers. This is a big one for veterans. They have a difficult time often securing their transcripts. We've gone out and we've put together all the information and all the websites that they need to be able to access those transcripts and then ease that process for them. So my summary on this, the Veteran Success Initiative, I probably could have just done this in one page or one sentence, but really, I think the Veteran Success Initiative is pretty much already a success story. 13 months ago, we sat down with a work group and said, what do the veterans need? How many veterans do we have? We couldn't even really answer those questions. We were doing a good job as a system. The campuses were doing a great job providing the services, but from a holistic standpoint, we were like, all right, well, how many veterans do we have? What do they need? And we've gone from that step to, with the Regent support and support in the legislature, support from the governor, securing $1 million. We've allocated that money, and now that money is already working out at the campus level. City College in Billings had a ribbon cutting ceremony last week to dedicate their veteran space, which was possible because of this funding. They're going to dedicate another space at the main campus on Veterans Day. So we've come a long way in a year where our work isn't done. Obviously, we've got this $1 million out there to work at the campus level. But if you look at where we were 13 months ago, where we are today, I think it's something everybody can be proud of. That ends my report.
Thank you, Mr. Muffick. I agree. It is indeed something that we can all be proud of, and I want to thank you for your leadership, as well as extending my appreciation to Regent Krause for his leadership, and reach out to the governor's office, as well as our congressional delegation and our legislative partners for their efforts in helping us to impact our students who have served their country so dutifully. So with that, I will see if there are any questions or comments from members of the board. Regent Krause.
Well, just a couple, and I look at this as a little bit like performance funding too. This is $1 million we got incrementally. It is sort of specific to veterans, students who are veterans, and it comes with a lot of opportunities to serve the people who served our country, and we may have some problems measuring our success, but we have no problem observing in our towns and in our state the penalties for failure and the problems with veterans who can't seem to find their way back. And I firmly believe still to this day that the university system is the place where they have the best chance of reentry coming back. And that's and I just want to thank Ron so much, and Brenda York and all of her counterparts on all of the campuses for putting the work in to make this done. I'm dedicated to following through on this. The next time you have a blue ribbon opening, tell me and I'll come down to it. I think the main thing I think about is I don't know what the right metrics are to tell us, what the success of this is, but I do know what the metrics are for failing to do this. And I just appreciate the legislature and the governor and the Commissioner of Higher Education, the chair of the board, stepping forward and pushing this and getting this through the legislature and making this a priority for us in this biennium. This is a big deal. And as the drawdown continues, it will continue to be a bigger deal. So thank you all for your efforts, and we'll continue.
Thank you, Regent Krause. Regent Albrecht.
Madam Chair, Regent Krause, thank you for all your work in this effort. I've spoken with students who are veterans on campus, and certainly this is an issue and such an important one. My question is, what are the plans for sustainability when you have this amount of funding that's put forward, and that's outstanding? What discussions have there been about sustainability?
Well, if that's directed to me, I'm going to say success. Okay, so we had a discussion this morning about success and failure. So I think nothing will attract the attention of the legislature or the governor's office like success. And so we need to find those metrics for success so we can make our case in the future.
Madam Chair, Regent Albrecht, I would add also the space piece is what it makes it sustainable. When you develop dedicated space, for example, at Western, they didn't have dedicated space before. They had veterans information and people that helped the veterans strewn around the campus. Now they have one space that they're using this funding to develop, so that space will be there perpetually.
Thank you, Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Muffet, thank you for your work regarding addressing the needs of our veteran students as well. We don't get a chance too often to congratulate other board members as well, and I want to say congratulations to Regent Krause for his commitment to this effort as well, because it's something that you kept on our radar. You as a board, and it was something that there was information provided that helped us to make it a priority. We're obviously very happy that the governor and the legislature felt that it was a priority as well. But I do want to congratulate Regent Krause. I think it does take that extra effort to prioritize something enough so that we can see why it is important. So thank you for all your efforts.
Regent Rogala.
I love technology and the internet. You can access great articles from years ago that you read. You don't necessarily remember the quotes. So this is a New York Times article on veteran engagement in the educational system. And this is from a quote from Rodrigo Garcia. He's the national chairman of Student Veterans of America. And he says, when asked whether the 6,700 colleges and universities that are approved as eligible to educate veterans on the GI Bill, whether they were doing enough to support former troops. And he says, Mr. Garcia, that overall they get a C+. So I'm wondering, excuse me, I'm wondering where the MUS stands in relation to other states, whether you can offer any advice there.
Madam Chair, Regent Rogala, excellent question. It's a question very similar to a question I got from Regent Tuss last year at the meeting in November in Missoula. And he asked me to give us a grade, and I think I said something like a C. If you're asking my opinion, I think we've gone from a C to an A. To take $1 million and get it from this last legislative session, and the way that the people on the campuses have addressed the needs and the best practices and the ideas they came up with in order to implement this funding, I would put us up against anybody in the country.
Thank you. Regent Krause.
Just to go back to that a little bit too, and I lost it. I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional, but I lost it. And if I remember it here in a second or two, I'll jump back in. But I did want to say that there are still, I think there are still states doing better than us. But I think we jumped a long way. One of the things that happened along the way in these last year and a half or so was the president came out and said, I want campuses to declare, are they going to be veterans friendly? And I can remember sitting in the basement of the Museum of the Rockies with the president of Montana State University who just said, well, what do you think, Regent Krause? Are we veteran friendly or are we veteran unfriendly? And I think that is a no-brainer, right? It is, and yet you say, boy, no-brainer, we're going to be veterans friendly, and yet the discussion around the table from the people who are implementing this on the campus, the people who are trying to make this campus veterans friendly, is one of a lot of struggle, a lot of work, a lot of things that they have to do with federal requirements. So it's great for the president to say that or a regent to say that, but it's the work of Ron and his subcommittees that's really getting it done, and it does come at a cost. I will say that it does come at a cost, and it is going to take sustainability if we want to continue to claim that. But I think we are inching up. I love, the meritocracy that is higher education, and we are inching up in that regard. So I do hold out some hope that we'll get a better grade.
Thank you very much. Great conversation. President Ingstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, Ron. A short time ago, there was some federal legislation underway aimed at making all veterans essentially residents of states for tuition purposes. It ran into some snags because of some financial implications. Do you have an update on that legislation by any chance?
Madam Chair, President Ingstrom, there are actually two bills. There's one in the House and one in the Senate. With Congress in recess, there hasn't been a lot of movement on that. What I'm hearing from our members of our veterans group that are Senator Tester and Senator Baucus's representatives, they think it's going to continue to move, that this has legs. The implementation date is proposed as July 1 of 2014, I believe. So we're monitoring it. It obviously is going to have some impact. If we've got every veteran around the country considered a resident student, it'll have some fiscal impact, I would imagine, and it could have some impact on the number of students on each campus. So our plan is to just continue to keep watching it, especially when Congress comes back into session, and we'll just go from there.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. That concludes then the Veteran Success Initiative presentation, and we'll keep you up there and have you invite the rest of your team, if you would, for the Student Affairs Initiative conversation. Madam President.
Madam Chair and members of the board, one thing that I would like to pose is that this is one of the most altruistic efforts that we have, and it's a commitment, and it's our duty to do this. It is also, because of it, one of the most compelling stories that I have to share with my donors. And just last year, Carol Smith, who's not even an alumna of Montana State University, we have actually embraced her now as and designated her with the title of Alumna by Choice. She helped us providing scholarships for spouses of veteran students, because sometimes those students have all this support, all these opportunities, but their spouses don't have equal opportunities. So these are some innovative ideas that our donors out there, our alumni, community members are willing to embrace.
That's a great story. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Muffick.
On. Thank you again, Madam Chair. I have a student affairs update for you, and I have some colleagues here. Commissioner Christian touched on a lot of this morning. It's about student affairs and re-engaging student affairs at the table with the ARSA committee. So we put together a group. We started this on August 12th, I believe. Put together this group of student affairs professionals at the direction of the commissioner and at the Deputy Commissioner Moisey, where we want to have student affairs issues be elevated in the ARSA agenda. And we think that fits with the direction that we're receiving from the commissioner and from you as the chair. over the past, well, I've been with the commissioner's office for 20 years, and it's always just been kind of an accepted thing in my mind that student affairs always was taking a back seat to the academic piece of ARSA, because the academic piece has got much more tangible things, as we saw with the level 1 memorandums, et cetera. And student affairs can be more of, I don't want to say a squishy issue, but it's just an issue that's not quite as tangible in some instances. So we put together this group. There's different membership from the different campuses, depending on whether it's the Dean of Students or the Vice President of Student Success or the Vice President of Student Affairs who participate. And then we formed a subgroup, and these members here are our subgroup members who sat down and said, all right, what is the vision of this group? What are our goals? What are our objectives? So I'd like to have them introduce themselves, just to put a name with a face or names with faces. Then I'll go through a presentation here to talk about our vision and talk about what it is that we want to bring to the board, what we hope to receive from the board, and then open it up for questions for this group, because these are the experts here of student affairs.
I'm Teresa Branch, VP for Student Affairs at the University of Montana in my 11th year.
I'm Nicole Hazelbaker, the Dean of Students at the University of Montana Western.
Camille Consalvo, Associate Dean for Student Services at Great Falls College, MSU.
Robert Marley, Interim Vice President for Student Success at Montana State in Bozeman, and I'm in my 11th week. So.
Good morning, Stacy Klippenstein, Vice Chancellor, Student Affairs, Montana State University, Billings.
Thank you all. We have a real good cross-section here. As you can tell, we have both flagships represented on this subgroup, and we have 2-year, and we have our regional 4 years represented as well on each side of the system. So this group had a number of conference calls where we sat down and said, all right, what is it that we want to do as far as what's our vision? So our vision, if you put up the first slide, Amy, it's to affirm that successful student affairs operations are an important key to the successful student learning experience. We vetted this quite a bit to talk about what is it. Clay talked about this, or Commissioner Christian talked about this, as far as student affairs touches students in so many different ways. And if we talk about what is student affairs, if you look at our list, financial aid is part of student affairs. So financial aid impacts affordability. Admissions and enrollment and residence halls and student conduct and student health insurance, all these activities and all these services, there's a wide breadth of what's provided by student affairs. And obviously, with that wide swath and different touch points with students, you're going to have an impact on students and student experience. And thus, we believe that student affairs is going to have an impact on retention and completion. And if we're we think we're a big part of the completion agenda going forward. As I talked about this group, our makeup of group, they differ according to the system, different units of the system. We have vice presidents of student affairs, we have vice presidents of student success, we have deans of students, deans of student services. It just depends on the size of the campus and the way the campus is organized. This group of student affairs officers that we've put together, it's also going to include myself and Deputy Commissioner Moisey, so that we can be, Dr. Moisey and I can be the conduit between the Commissioner's office and these individuals at the campus. So you might be sitting there going, okay, what's the purpose of this initiative going forward? What is it that you're going to bring to us, or how you can make a difference here? So we talked about, and these are the bullet points that we've come up with as far as what this group envisions us accomplishing and what we're going to benefit from and what topics we can address, et cetera. That's what I'll go over next. So we want to develop a system-wide approach to student affairs through a coordinated and collaborative approach between campuses and the Commissioner's office. Coordinated and collaborative approach doesn't mean micromanagement from the Commissioner's office. We understand that there's different issues at different campuses and different resources and different organizations at the campus level. So that means more of a coordination from the commissioner's office. I look at our financial literacy education program as an example. We took a coordinated and collaborative approach. We developed best practices, and I think we can expand that type of model to student affairs. One of the goals that we have in addition to that is we want to address potential issues and work proactively to address these issues rather than reactively. That's, I think that speaks for itself as far as rather than waiting for, not waiting, but rather than having something blow up and then we address it, we want to identify those issues, and that's what this group will do. We'll be able to interact. One campus can be able to say, well, we're having issues with this, and then another campus will go, oh, we better check into that and try and get this handled on our end before something happens. We're going to report to the board on student issues and our system approach to solving those issues, and we want to provide an administrative perspective to student issues. Now, you've got the students have a great voice. Students are involved as they should be, but these people here are the people that can implement and impact things to improve those issues or address those issues for students and improve things. Next slide, Amy. Assist with the formation and development of policy level concepts, Board of Regents policies, and legislative concepts. Campuses have expressed they're looking for direction from the board. And it's kind of a two-way street. This group can tell the board, hey, we're looking for some direction on this, or the board can come to me or Neil and say, we want to address this, and then we go to this group and we talk with this group and say, all right, this is what the board sees as something that needs to be addressed. How do we address this? And then obvious bullet point here, improve communication throughout the system related to student affairs and best practices development. I've kind of touched on that already, the ability to communicate, bring this group together, and talk about what issues they might be having and what challenging issues there are. That'll eliminate some duplication of efforts at a campus. If, for example, one campus has a great policy on X, Y, or Z, then why reinvent it at another campus if they can say, hey, do you guys have a good policy on this? And then we can discuss that and get a more of a consistent implementation. Because I touched on the fact student affairs is so broad, we looked at it as, yes, it's broad, it touches so many different things. We want to be able to focus our efforts. We want to identify the most challenging issues to be addressed each year going forward. Might be 3, 4, or 5 issues. It could be big picture issues. It could be something related to performance-based funding, or it could be specific student conduct issues. But those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about in this group, identify and address, and come back to the board and say, all right, this is what we're doing, or this is the assistance we need, or this is what we've done based on your direction, depending on the situation. I've touched on this a little bit, the role of student affairs in system initiatives, performance-based funding, and the completion goal of 60%. I talk about this often with this group. Affordability, for example. Affordability is affected by financial aid. The perception of affordability is also, or the value of education is also affected based on the student's experience or the parent's experience when they bring their student to the campus. If they're receiving quality services, if they're having a quality life in their residence hall, that makes that education seem much more affordable and worthwhile, and that's what student affairs can bring to the table. I talked about veterans already, talked about the financial literacy education program. Those are student affairs issues that we've already addressed, student affairs initiatives that we've already been working on outside of this group. We want to bring this group in and bring our information to this group as well. They were, I don't want to say left out, but when we went through our first iteration of the RFP process for the financial literacy grants, sub-grants last year, a lot of these people at this table weren't involved in that process. We went directly to financial aid, and there were some communication issues, et cetera, between the individuals on the campuses that caused some consternation, and by having this group together, those kind of issues will be eliminated. The last piece of this is to talk about student conduct. These people here and the deans of students, they're the ones that are addressing the issues that we're seeing on campuses, the issues of sexual assault, alcohol and other drug use. Student health insurance costs have become a big issue, particularly for those individuals that are of a certain age. And then ADA accessibility issues are another topic that have already come up in discussions by our group. So these are the kind of things that I wouldn't be surprised if we're back in front of the board here in a few months saying, okay, we're going to address X, Y, and Z, and here's how we're going to do it and why we're going to do it. So next slide, Amy, the benefits to this. I think I talked about this already a bit. Campuses are going to assist each other in addressing issues with a common approach. We're going to share resources and best practices rather than duplicating efforts. And our first issue is to continue to address the sexual assault issue and put together a work group made up of these student affairs officers, similar to the subgroup that's sitting right here that we put together to develop our processes and our goals and our vision statement. We want to put together a small group that can then coordinate with the student group that has come out of the Not in Our State summit that the students put together. So we look at next steps. We figure we're going to report our next steps at the November board meeting. Those next steps will be something to the effect of, these are the issues that we've identified, or here's what we're going to focus on. It's a couple months from now. It would be very difficult, for example, to think that we're going to resolve an issue between now and September, or now and November, and be able to report on here's what we did to solve this or that. But we are going to be able to say, okay, here's what we've identified, this is what we're going to focus on, and here's our time frame for addressing these things. This group is very engaged. I don't see us as just coming to the board with reports. I see this group coming to the board with ideas, coming to the boards with solutions to problems, and coming up with solutions to problems or to issues that the board comes to us with and asks us to address. So looking forward to being very engaged with this group and with the board moving forward related to student affairs issues. And with that, that ends my report, and I'll take any questions from, or so will the panel. They're my experts here, so please feel free to ask us anything related.
Thank you all for your great work and the great presentation. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Regent Robinson.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just have one question. Has there been discussion about having a student representative on the task force that you put together?
Madam Chair, Regent Robinson, yes, we've had discussions about that. We do want to involve students at some level. What we've talked about is having this group separate as an administrative group, and then having the subgroup interface with the students, or Dr. Moisey or myself interfacing with the students, and then bringing them into the fold whenever it's appropriate.
If I might add, I think it's I know it's a subgroup, and I saw it as far as related to sexual assault and what's going on with the activities there. But it seems like across the board, it would be good to have that entity to interact with on a regular basis, because certainly you're addressing the affairs of the students, and they have their own experience as well that they can bring forward. So I would recommend that somehow it be more consistent.
Madam Chair, Regent Robinson, I would just add, we fully intend to engage the students on this. That we're still kind of working through the semantics on how that fits in, and with the administrative piece as well. I don't know if anyone here at the table has another thought. We did discuss this previously. With your approval, Madam Chair.
Just so we can be clear on this and make sure that we're communicating right on this, we have been involved with our peer educators. There's different names on each campus, and we're working closely with them with our sexual assault, as well as the student government. We're in contact with the president of each of the student governments, making sure that they know what we're doing, how we're progressing on this.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Regent Rogala.
So first off, it always seems intuitive that student affairs officers would share best practices between institutions, but in practice, we all know that it's very difficult to accomplish. So first off, just a good congratulations to taking this on yourselves to share best practices on any sort of student affairs issue that could be disseminated throughout the system. So thank you, and that's it.
Thank you. Regent Buchanan.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Thank you. And from my experience with the Affordability Task Force, it is very constructive to have the multi-campus interactions, and it's a great brainstorming session in itself, just having those participants at the table. With that, what's the timeline? I'm not sure where the Affordability Task Force is. Is that over? Is this a one-year group, or is this something that we hope to maintain and continue?
Madam Chair, Regent Buchanan, I'm a little confused. You asking about the Affordability Task Force?
Both
You
of
asking
them.
about
Is that effort over, and are you proposing that this is kind of a one-year program, like it seems like the Affordability Task Force it seems to have wrapped up?
Okay, first question, or let me answer this group. We see this group as continuing, similar to the chief academic officers coming to and having a call every month and coming to the board with academic issues. We see this as a continual group that will not go away. Related to the Affordability Task Force, I've been working on specific information regarding to what you and I had talked about, Regent Buchanan, related to the levers of affordability and looking at financial aid and using that financial aid to incentivize completions. One of the biggest things that we've been able to come up with to address affordability that I'm going to bring to the Affordability Task Force is how we've used the financial literacy subgrants at the 2 flagship campuses to be a kind of a catalyst to where we now have the offices of student success at both campuses addressing or using the financial literacy subgrants to address students on a number of fronts in the different areas. When a student comes in now that's having issues with debt management, for example, they're going to be talking to a counselor that talks to them about debt management, academic planning, about what they can look at for a career. And if your career is teaching and you're going to make $20,000 when you get out, your debt is going to impact your ability to pay your debt is going to be impacted by your income. We've been able to pull all that together at the 2 flagships as part of this financial literacy subgrants, which is addressing affordability in a way that we've never addressed it. This board's addressed it in the way of dealing with tuition increases or freezing tuition, obviously, but we're addressing it now from a student affairs point of view differently than we ever have before. So I expect to re-engage the task force. One of the issues we had with the task force, just be quite honest, was I was on paternity leave because we had a baby in March, and then the financial aid directors that make up the majority of the Affordability Task Force didn't want to meet at the beginning of the school year. So we're looking at re-engaging. Regent Buchanan, you and I need to have some more conversations related to the levers of affordability as well.
Good answer. Thank you. Finally, I know during the Affordability Task Force you had a significant Regent involvement. Regent Teal was often on the calls. Regent Tuss was on the calls. I don't know if that's something that you found beneficial or should be considered with this group, because I know that as we came to this venue meetings, it was nice to have some Regental input related to the progress and the conversation. So I don't know if you feel that was valuable.
Madam Chair, Regent Buchanan, if I could just weigh in on this thing. I do appreciate sort of the feel of a task force to this group, but I think I see it much more as a vital part of the overall ARSA committee that, whether it's financial aid officers, various groups within your employ at the university system and the commissioner's level meet all the time on a variety of subjects. And I just think to some extent the sort of the tangibility piece of this, it's a part of ARSA that I don't believe has had enough attention over the last 4 or 5 years. We need to bring some attention back to it in that so many aspects of what we're talking about as a board, I mean, in terms of where we're going and what task force are doing, the message of the board, whether we're talking from, the basics of affordability conversations we've had for years or student success, student financial literacy, time to degree completion, retention, freshman, sophomore, all those things are student-driven, student affairs type issues that I just think for various reasons and various makeups of the structure of ARSA, we've sort of lost our way on those and really encouraged Deputy Commissioner Moisey and Ron's involvement to see that comes back to the forefront and the importance that it deserves within the structure of your all's organization at the Commissioner's office. So, I see us putting the importance back in that structure and then asking that structure to interact with all of these groups, board members, students, that is your professional staff, and they need to interact at their level and then also interact with the various groups that need attention, that need proactive assistance, all of those things that we've been talking about. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the board? One of the things that I would just add to the comments and the questions that have already asked is, especially as I look at one of your bullets, I think on the 5th slide, speaking to student issues, system approaches, solving issues, etc., and the coordinated and collaborative approaches. There's been a lot of conversation about quality, and I would just ask that this group go forward and consider how each of the components embedded within your work here, from financial aid all the way down to career services, student activities, etc., how do they contribute to the overall quality of the delivery of education across the Montana University system, if that could be at the heart of where we go with our conversations. So I thank you all again for your great work and your time that you've already spent on this, and I look forward to hearing more from this team. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Moisey will now look at item C on the information agenda.
And I will address item C and D fairly rapidly as we're a little bit behind schedule. So item C, Madam Chair, members of the board, is our report, our annual report on our online learning. And what I'm going to report on that is that we're going to make that report in November for a couple of reasons. One is we're re-engaging with the e-learning group and really thinking much more strategically about the role that that group plays in terms of our online capacity and course delivery. And so, for example, the change in board policy 406 was one of the aspects of that, which is we already talked about earlier in terms of intellectual property rights, in terms of the course materials. So I will report on that in November. Item E then is our annual accreditation report. Very briefly, all of our institutions in the MUS are accredited by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities. All of the campuses are on the new revolving 7-year cycle, and this is just a report to let you know the status of board actions, NWCCU board, that were taken this spring. And so it's I guess in a nutshell, all the campuses are still accredited and doing well and continuing through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moisey. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? At this time, is there any public comment? Any public comment on anything on the ARSA agenda? Any public comment? So, Madam Superintendent, if you would please allow us to take a 15-minute break, and then we will open up with you when we come back. We will break until 11:05. Please adhere to the clock on the computer. Thank you so much. The governor's office for being so patient with our agenda as we move through it. I look forward to both conversations with each of you this morning, and Superintendent, we welcome you to the table as always, and growing and strengthening our partnership with you and with the Board of Public Education is a priority of this board's. And for newer members to the Board of Regents, we have a number of initiatives where there are great partnerships taking place, some that are new, some that have existed for a long time. One that is brand new is the data, the K-20 data partnership right now. Additionally, we have the opportunity as this board to oversee our pre-service educator programs. And one of the things I would alert this board to is the fact that in that regard, under the ARSA committee, the last time that the Council of Deans came to the table, and I was reminded of this summer, was in March of 2010. And I would like you to know that they will be coming back to the table at November to have a conversation with us about our pre-service programs, along with the superintendent and the deans from MSU and the University of Montana, to discuss the important work that's going on in regards to Common Core ELA and math across Montana at the K-12 level, and how that connects then to the post-secondary level in the Montana University system. And then finally, before I turn it over to the superintendent, one of the charges from this board to Deputy Commissioner Seck, Deputy Commissioner Moisey, in May was to remove any and all barriers on our end that exist to dual enrollment. And so we'll have a conversation more in depth about that tomorrow, and I look forward to that, because I know that the superintendent, the governor's office, we as a board, folks at the Board of Public Education all want to grow and strengthen those opportunities for our students and their families across Montana. And so with that, Superintendent, we thank you for your great work in helping to connect us to the K-12 community, and for the great work that you're doing in general on behalf of all of the students that we all get to serve across Montana. So thank you for joining us today.
My blue light's on, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's always a pleasure to be at the Board of Regents and receive updates on what's going on in your world, and kind of figure out where we might be able to partner on some of the issues, and so that we can move the entire K-20 education system forward. There's still a lot going on, but I'm going to just hit a few highlights. And first of all, just thank Chairperson McLean for her leadership. We had a Civics Education Institute this summer where we brought K-12 teachers together, and the social studies teachers and the teachers who are actually teaching civics in our high schools haven't come together for a long time, and so they were very thankful to have this forum. We brought national civics organizations together. We brought a lot of the state, the great work that some of the schools across the state are doing, and had a 2-day Civics Education Institute, of which Regent McLean, our Chairperson McLean, participated in, because it's always great to have a chairperson of the Board of Regents that's actually a K-12 teacher, so that's fun. But she then took, and under her leadership, brought iCivics, which was one of the national organizations we had at the Institute, into the University of Montana Education Department. And just have to give congratulations to her high school class for their presentation of a debate of the Supreme Court decisions in Citizens United in front of Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and so that must have been quite an experience for those students and for her as well. And so I just thank you for and commend you on that effort. And as you know, preparing students to be college and career ready is really part of my Graduation Matters Montana initiative. It's not just about making sure students are graduating from high school, but that they are graduating ready for the next steps in their lives. And it was actually an honor yesterday to be able to close the economic summit that Senator Baucus had, and talk about a lot of the great partnerships we have going on, and tell the business community and the people who are the job creators that they really do need to pay attention to both K-12 and higher education, because we are creating the workers of tomorrow, particularly for our state. And so that was a real honor, and I was pleased to be able to talk a lot about the partnerships that we have going on between our two systems. And just several of those projects, just a couple updates that, as Chairperson McLean pointed out, we are working with the Commissioner's Office on revising dual enrollment policies and reviewing grant applications for Big Sky Pathways and for 2-year colleges to increase dual enrollment. And I know that it's a priority of this board, of the Board of Public Ed, of my office, and of the Governor's office to make sure that dual enrollment is expanded, and those opportunities for high school students to step into college having some credits under their belt is really important. And I think it's doable. It's, we know what the issues are, and it is removing barriers, I think, on both of the higher education system and the barriers that we may put in place too at the K-12 system. And right now, I really feel like everything's on the table for discussion. as long as we can work together to remove those barriers and increase those numbers, I'm interested in moving forward on those issues. Right now, it's a hit or miss sort of system across the state. Some are doing great jobs, some, still need some work, but as I said, I do think it's doable, and I am certainly committed to get this work done over the next couple of years so that we can make sure. It fits right into college completion as well. We know students who take credits in high school and leave high school with college credits are more apt to go to college, to stay in college, and to complete college. And so it's a benefit for everybody across the state. Other partnerships, that we have a partnership with Gear Up, and I've reported on this before, but the ACT was offered for free as a result of Gear Up and the commissioner's work, making sure that that was offered free to every junior across the state. And the numbers that came out of that were pretty significant. There was an increase of nearly 3,000 more juniors, more students taking the test, taking the ACT than the year before. Another positive result was the number of students who demonstrated that they are actually ready for college. And so these may be students who did not have financial access to that test before, or just didn't know that they might be ready for college. But as a result of every junior taking the ACT, 840 more students qualified for the Governor's Best and Brightest Scholarship. 520 more students are eligible for full admission into one of Montana's university systems, and 754 more students are eligible for provisional admissions. So those juniors just need to take an additional class or two this year. But again, all in the name and the spirit of making sure that we're increasing the opportunities and the access for high school students to step into one of our colleges and stay in our state. We're also working with Gear Up in the Commissioner's Office to promote College Application Week, which will be November 11th through the 15th, where high school seniors will have the opportunity to complete a college application at school during the week, during the school day. And that, of course, is a great follow-up to the ACT. So they're seniors now, they'll know their scores, they'll be able to now fill out a college application. And so thank you to the participating colleges that have offered to waive their application fee during that week. I think you'll see a lot of practice happening, and it's really good for those students to be able to say, I made an application to college, and how great is that? Also, one other connection we've been able to make is through a partnership with the Student Assistant Foundation. Undergraduation Matters Montana, they have provided us a grant of $50,000 last year, and we're about to announce a $50,000 grant from them again this year. On Friday, we'll be in Missoula to do that kickoff. And what that allows us to do is OPI then gets to grant these $5,000 grants out to high schools that are Graduation Matters high schools, and tell them, this is to be used to increase FAFSA, or for students to fill out the financial aid form for financial aid for college. And one of the great, we were able to do this last year across the state, and what we saw from the schools who participated in that grant program was FAFSA completion actually increased by 5% in those schools that participated in that grant program, while the state overall decreased by 2%. And so we know that when just a little bit of focus is placed on what those college-going barriers are, these are things that you must do in order to gain access to college, we know that schools will step up, we know students will step up, and we know families will step up. We're doing our kickoff at Big Sky High School in Missoula because they actually saw a 9% increase in their FAFSA completion from the previous year as a result of the grant that we were able to provide them. They had open house nights. They trained 10 FAFSA counselors within their school. They did community outreach at all kinds of different events in Missoula. They hosted phone banks trying to get families to come to the FAFSA open house nights. They put a specific focus on American Indian students in their school, and were able to pull a lot of those families in as well so that their student could make application. And so we'll be doing that kickoff and announcing that grant that we will be doing that with our schools again this year. So a lot of great things happening across the state with connections and just making sure we're doing as great a job as we can to make sure every student has access and opportunity to higher education, and particularly our Montana University system. I've been traveling the state, and I did stop and visit with President Cruzado last week and Chancellor Groseth, and I'll set to meet with President Royce on Friday to talk about some of these initiatives that we have going on and how we might be able to increase, again, our partnerships across the state, both with the Board of Regents and with individual college systems. And Graduation Matters, of course, is going great guns, and we're getting a lot of great feedback from the efforts that are going on at the local level and have really good data to show for the local efforts that are going on. As I said yesterday, 250 local business school partnerships at the local level have been created as a result of Graduation Matters. We have great public-private partnerships at the state level that allow us to support those local efforts. Again, our Student Assistant Foundation partnership, and just a couple more things. We're working with the Council of Deans of Education on educator evaluations, making sure there's that connection. We now have a statewide system of principal and teacher evaluation, at least some standards that must be met when a school is doing teacher and principal evaluation. So we want to make sure that our teacher ed programs are teaching those standards as they create their teacher candidates and move out, so they know what good teaching is and what quality teaching is and effective teaching when they step into the classroom, as well as the Montana Common Core that Chairperson McLean talked about. And just one other issue is I recently wrote a letter to the Department of Education at the federal level, and as you know, as a result of our state's adoption of the Montana Common Core standards, we'll be doing a new assessment. It's called Smarter Balanced. We've been engaged with this assessment consortia for the past couple of years as a governing state. And so I wrote to the department because it's my intention this spring not to double test schools. Right now, as it stands, we would have to do our old standardized assessment across the state, as well as do a big field test of this new online assessment. And so it's my intention that we don't do that, so we're trying to request a small waiver in our assessment system that we would go all in on the Smarter Balanced assessment. Everybody will go online this year if that's approved. Well, I think it's a great year to do it because we'll be able to sort of test out our technology, see if our schools are prepared. It's aligned to the Common Core, so it's based on our new standards and not our old standards. And under No Child Left Behind, we're at 100% proficiency rate anyway, so everybody's failing next year. And so it's a good year to try out a new assessment. Again, I would just ask the higher education community once more, as I do every time, to let's really set up something where we can look at the Common Core and the new assessment systems and make sure we're aligning our systems as we move down the road. I've talked several times about taking the college and career ready standards, both in English, language arts, and mathematics, and bringing in those gateway courses in our college systems, Composition 101 and college algebra, and make sure that we're talking the same language and not just say you need a 21 ACT score, but what does that actually mean? And here are the standards that we're saying if students leave high school, and they leave proficient or competent in these skills, they'll be able to step into those classes. And I just want to be able to make sure that we're saying that with confidence, and I'm not sure we're there yet. And so I do think there needs to be a group of college algebra faculty that come together along with high school teachers to really talk about those issues, as well as Composition 101 and English language arts teachers in high school, so that we can be confident when we are saying if they are proficient on the Smarter Balanced assessment, they will have the skills necessary to enter those gateway courses and not have to be remediated. I think it'll go a long way for our conversations across the state, as well as some confidence in our systems and your systems for making sure students are making smooth transitions. And so with that, there's just a lot going on, but as always, I'm pleased to be here and pleased to talk about these partnerships. I do think that we are really moving Montana's K-20 education system along, and it's a really exciting time to be involved with this group and K-12 together. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Excellent remarks. And as always, we appreciate you coming to our table and being a part of the conversation. Are there questions or comments for the superintendent? Regent Rogala?
First off, Superintendent Juneau, thank you so much. I don't think you get enough credit for some of the work that your department is accomplishing. I just want to tell one story. So I graduated from Darby High School, and freshman year we had access to Spanish. Sophomore year was German. Junior year was French, and then senior year we made it back to Spanish again. So we went full circle. And so I really want to applaud the work that between your offices and our offices, and with the legislature's help, what we've been able to accomplish with Montana Digital Academy and with dual enrollment. And from my perspective on the board, any help to continue those efforts forward, I welcome them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chancellor Blackketter.
Thank you. Superintendent Juneau, I'm curious, when we required all the juniors to take that, did the average ACT score change very much?
Yeah, so it wasn't mandatory. Students and families could still opt into taking the ACT, but nearly 100% of them did, just because I think it was a free opportunity to assess their college readiness. And yes, our scores dipped. Previously, we had 65 to 70% of our graduating seniors actually take the ACT, and so those were students who were on a college career track. But now that we're including everybody, we're going to see dips in our overall score, which was it was actually right below the national average, and so it wasn't too horrendous. I think over time we're going to see a trend upward, and what we've learned from other states that have actually gone with 100% ACT in their states is there's a dip and then the trend goes upwards, but it also, students who previously did not have the opportunity to attend college, those who were economically disadvantaged, and minority students, their numbers increased in their colleges across the state.
I guess my point would be probably not too significantly, meaning that you were really targeting a group of students that probably were capable of taking the test or should be taking the test but weren't taking the test. And just an observation, when you look at applications at my previous institution and even the Montana Tech and institutions around the state, typically the students who apply but don't come to our institutions, that group of students often have higher ACT scores on the average than those who do come. And so our ability to identify those students and attract them, I think, is very critical to the system so that we can pull those best students out.
Yeah, and I guess, Madam Chair, I would just add, we're really excited to sort of look at the data, and at a statewide level, really, we'll be able to assess how our high schools are doing in preparing students for college and what those college readiness standards might have to be, and fill in the gaps. And I think we can learn a lot from the data that we're going to collect from that test about those exact issues of where are those students going, and particularly with our data linkages now, with the high school transcript project. Once that gets up and running, we'll be able to know a lot about where we need to go, who it is that we need to target, and how do we build that support for those students to enter the Montana University system.
Look forward to that. Madam President.
Yes. Madam Chair, Superintendent Juneau, I want to applaud the additional conversations in regards to the courses in algebra and statistics and even calculus. Because of that, in collaboration with the chancellors and the dean of the affiliated campuses of Montana State University, we are recognizing that one of the most burning questions for our faculty members is in regards to the area of quality. What else can we do in order to guarantee quality and that excellence in our classroom? So what we have decided is to set aside a day for all 4 campuses to meet. So we are going to be sending out invitations for the first one MSU summit, and we have selected the areas of math and English/writing, so that we can bring faculty from our 4 campuses and devote a day and a half to deep conversations about curriculum and standards and learning outcomes. I would like to extend an invitation to you and to your staff, because this is a continuum. We are not in 2 different businesses. It's exactly the same coin that we use, and it will be absolutely extraordinary for us to further conversations in those two areas. That doesn't mean that there are other opportunities, but if we can give a leg up to our students in the areas of math and writing and reading, then they're going to be ready for college, irrespective of the campus that they choose to go.
Thank you. Regent Kraus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Superintendent Juneau. I want to give a leg up to the students, what it's all about. One of the ways we're going to work on that, I think, is by giving a leg up to the high school teachers who want to qualify for these, to teach these classes. And to do that, I think we have to come up with some non-traditional delivery methods of how we're going to deliver those classes to the teachers. Now, the teachers get out after they've finished teaching school on a certain date. Typically, that date is not coinciding with when summer school classes start, and nor are they able to devote the whole summer to spend on one of our campuses taking these classes so that they can qualify to teach these courses. So the challenge for the four-year institutions, I think, that are going to lead this effort is to find non-traditional ways to deliver these courses to teachers to qualify them to teach college algebra and to get accredited. And so is that flip-in courses? Is that teaching block courses in the summer in a short period of time, 8 hours a day? I don't know what that is, but that needs to be figured out at that level pretty quickly if we're going to move forward on this, I think. So that's the only comment I have, but I appreciate the program, and like you say, the more juniors and seniors that can find success in a college class, the more we're going to get enrolled.
Right. And Madam Chair, I really appreciate those comments because it is sort of both dual enrollment offered on-site or online by college faculty, but also high school faculty being qualified and being able to deliver those college courses right on campus at their high school. I always tell people this is not a new thing. I took concurrent enrollment when I was in high school way back in the day, and we're still trying to figure out what these processes should look like. And so now that I'm superintendent, I think we're able to do it and step forward and really try to fix this system so that these it's not for everybody, of course, but for those students who are ready to step up and take those, particularly for our rural schools. Right now, there are a lot of our urban, I guess, students who can walk across the street or go catch right down to the college and go to on-site college courses. But those students who are out in rural Montana really need a high school teacher to be able to teach those courses. It's difficult to do online courses, although it's great that they have an offering, but to have a teacher there right on site who's doing that work, I think, is also very important. So that is part of the mix as well as trying to figure out how to deliver these services.
Further questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Superintendent Juneau, real exciting to hear anytime that we further that bridge between K-12 and higher education. It's very encouraging. I'm a bit curious, and President Cruzado brought up the comment about quality, and there must be so much more behind the scenes that go on in terms of developing these dual enrollment courses and the interaction between K-12 and higher ed. Could you speak a bit about how the quality is maintained in these courses and the interaction with, let's say, faculty and math departments and English departments at the universities? What kind of communication goes on to just make sure that what the students are getting in these dual enrollment courses will generate success as they move through the higher education system?
It's a great question. Thank you for that. My understanding is that dual enrollment, if they're taught by college faculty, are actually created by college faculty, and those are courses that are offered as true college credit. And so quality control comes from the university system that dual credit is offered from. As far as concurrent enrollment, there are memorandums of understanding that are created between the campus and that high school, where the high school teacher needs to have some minimal qualifications as well, usually a master's degree in that content area, and then follow the course syllabus that the at least the course content that the university system or the campus they're affiliated with provides. And so that, as far as my understanding, the quality control of those courses, whether they're dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment, are guided by the respective campuses that those classes are offered from.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Okay, I guess I'd like to just close this out and thank everyone for each piece that contributed, I think, in a very meaningful way to this dialogue. There are some very promising conversations taking place at the table and away from the table of the dual enrollment task force in regards to how these models take shape, how they might take shape in the future. And I think that there's some great opportunities both for K-12 faculty as well as post-secondary faculty in the conversations that I am hearing about. And we will learn more about these when Dr. Sett comes to the table as part of the 2-year committee. That said, I think I would go back again to the word that they are very promising and ultimately will provide face-to-face opportunities for the students regardless of where they live. And I think that that is the challenge that we have faced for so long, is providing those opportunities to all students in all communities. And I think that we're at a point where we say, where we've said enough talking, we've got to get the work done, and we have folks on the ground who I think are willing to do that at both levels. So I look forward to that, and I sense from what I'm hearing at this table that there's a great deal of willingness to provide those opportunities for all of those students. And then finally, President Cruzado touched very effectively on this continuum. When we all came to the table at the Board of Education meeting that was again convened by Governor Bullock in July, there was a rich sense around the table from the members of this board as well as the member of the Board of Public Education, from the superintendent, from the governor, and that we have before us the task, and all of us do, and we must embrace it, to close the achievement gaps and to close the opportunity gaps that our students have. Sometimes they come to school and those gaps already exist when they are coming into preschool or coming into kindergarten. Well, the fact is those gaps continue to exist well into the time when these students enter our system in the Montana University level. And so it is incumbent upon all of us to have the tools and to be ready to do all we can to address those achievement and opportunity gaps on behalf of every single student that we serve. So I look forward to continued partnership with you, Madam Superintendent, with the Board of Public Education, with Mr. Donovan, and with all of you in the room, because our students come to us in many different shapes and sizes and from all different backgrounds. And I think it is incumbent upon every single one of us to make sure that we do everything we can to create opportunities where none existed before and to raise the level of achievement for every single student. So thank you so very much for the dialogue today. And with that then, I think this is a nice opportunity to segue to the office of the governor, who I think is committed to that agenda as well. So Madam Policy Advisor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Regents. It is an honor to be here, and the governor and myself acknowledge, recognize, and thank you for your service and your good work. To the Regents, much of your work is very challenging and often thankless, and the governor recognizes that and is very grateful for your hard work. And to those of you who are in the buildings, on the campuses, thank you for your hard work as well. There's some big changes that are taking place in the state of Montana, and it looks very positive for our future, for our students, and for our economy. I would like to share with you some of the activities that have been going on in the Capitol and throughout the state, and update you on some things that the governor has been up to. He's been a busy man. Since our last convening with the Board of Education meeting, that was the governor came out of that very hopeful and very grateful. And he continues to work on his priorities of better jobs, better education, and more effective government. And as he and the rest of the administration move forward with that agenda, it becomes more and more clear that education is kind of the cornerstone of that piece, that better jobs and more effective government are based around education. As you mentioned, as you heard earlier from Deputy Commissioner Trevor, our Complete College Montana kickoff was in August, and the governor's very committed to this, to these efforts to find ways to increase the number of Montanans who have a post-secondary degree or certification, and looks forward to learning more about ways that we can move forward with that. I'd like to share with you some of the things we've learned and the stories of our back-to-school tour, the governor's back-to-school tour. And the purpose of the back-to-school tour, which took place this month, was to learn about existing programs, for the governor to discuss his educational interests, to understand the needs, the opportunities, and the challenges that are going on throughout the state, and encourage students from early childhood through higher education to make Montana proud, and to thank teachers. The schools that he selected to visit were deliberately chosen so that he could explore some of these interests that I will share with you. He also presented a guest column that was published in most of the newspapers throughout the state that laid out some of these interests as well. There was the event was kind of kicked off with a back-to-school video that was posted on the governor's website that, again, asked students to work hard and make Montana proud, and asked them to thank their teachers, that they've done very hard work. We visited a number of early learning sites, 3 early learning sites. 2 of them were on, one in Great Falls. They were a couple of different programs within that site in Great Falls, their ELF program, and Hamilton. And those two sites are public school, K-12 schools that have decided to prioritize early learning and their preschools at the cost of other programs. Creative funding, whether it was grants or cuts from other programs, larger class sizes in some cases, and great challenges that they've decided to make this a priority so that those students are kindergarten ready. Because as you have heard before, if children come into kindergarten ready to learn, their likelihood, if they have a quality preschool experience, they are much more likely to be successful in the K-12 system, the higher education system, and contributing to our economy. At the K-12 level, one of the governor's greatest priorities is dropout prevention, and he has been working very closely with Superintendent Juneau. He's grateful for her leadership in Graduation Matters, and we attended a Graduation Matters kickoff assembly at Polson High School, where the rain did fall, and the students did applaud. In fact, the governor got a standing ovation, and in the pouring rain outside, which was really remarkable. It was certainly a feel-good experience, but it was also the data backs it up, and the dropout rates for Montana have consistently been decreasing for the past 5 years, and those Graduation Matters schools are showing the greatest hope and the greatest movement there. So great job, Superintendent Juneau. Well, and the concept of the partnership with the grassroots level and the identification by community leaders of the barriers for those children to graduating and solutions to those problems is really a brilliant, a simple yet brilliant concept that is working, and it engages the community in a shared problems and shared solutions. The governor is interested in ways that technology can support student learning, specifically in those rural areas, those rural communities. We visited the Montana Digital Academy. 8,000 students in our state right now are taking courses in the Montana Digital Academy. About half of those students are course recovery, so they failed a course before. So that is a great dropout prevention piece, as well as offering Regent Regalo, your German and your Latin and the Mandarin Chinese, and courses that certainly would not be offered in some of those rural areas. Supporting teachers and instruction in meaningful ways is another strong interest of the governor, and he's very interested and excited about the implementation of the new evaluation system for administrators and teachers, and the work that has gone into developing those, the work of all key stakeholders, including MEA, MFT, and the superintendent's office, and educational leaders. And then lastly, I don't need to bring it up because it's already been brought up, but dual enrollment, and which goes directly into the higher education experience. But that is a college access issue, as well as a college completion issue. And he is grateful for the efforts that are being made in that direction, and is very interested to see the progress that will be made in dual enrollment. We visited with representatives from MSU. President Cruzado was present, and Gallatin College at Bozeman High School to highlight some of the different options that were there. And there was a great dialogue about some of the, it seems so simple, just offer these courses. And yet we live in a land of bureaucracy, and there are many complexities. And Gallatin College has a person who is designated to do everything from help those develop the MOUs between the institutions, as well as sitting down with the students, filling out the applications, helping them find funding for those programs. And there are some great solutions that are out there, and my sense is that we are at a point where there is this year significant growth, and there will be more growth happening in that area. In higher education, you certainly have heard that, and yes, in the State of the State address, the governor did state the big goal of 40 to 60% of Montanans with a college degree or certification, and we have gotten national attention with our College Now initiative, and of seeing a high increase in those numbers from 37 to 40 approximate numbers there, and innovative things. As we are also considered leaders nationally in that performance-based funding initiative, as you've heard before with the Complete College Montana. Teacher education, we visited 2 different teacher education programs down in Dillon as well as in Missoula, and have seen some of the challenges in teacher recruitment, as well as the changes that are taking place, and making sure that those teachers, those pre-service teachers, are well trained and ready to work in the classroom. And then lastly, the governor is very interested in promoting research that is directly related to workforce development. And he visited a human performance lab, biomechanics lab at the University of Montana, and is excited at possibilities, and obviously is thrilled at the announcement this morning Commissioner Christian gave us as well. And as mentioned earlier, Governor has worked hard with the Main Street Montana initiative in understanding the needs of our workforce, of our businesses in growing Montana's economy, and how that relates directly to education. So the good news is we're doing great on many fronts. We gathered a great deal of information, saw things firsthand. Much of it was anecdotal to match the data that many of you have shared with us. Early childhood is moving forward. Office of Public Instruction and DPHHS are sitting down at the table to identify where we are as a state, where our opportunities are, where our challenges are. K-12, as I mentioned, dropout rates are decreasing. Montana Digital Academy is doing great things. College and career readiness, there's conversations that just happened that we witnessed that are going on. And in higher education, we have economic development clusters that are taking place and we're seeing, and with the Economic Development Summit here in Butte over the past couple of days, many corporations recognize the great things that Montana has to offer. And the governor looks forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to working with him as he moves forward. Are there questions or comments? Regent Krause.
Just one comment of thanks to the governor. It takes some gumption to set a goal 50% higher than the current level, and something that is not easily achievable to go to 60% and put your name on that. And I really appreciate the governor doing that. I think that opens the door for the Board of Regents to achieve many of the things it's trying to do. So please convey our thanks and appreciation for that bit of courage.
If I may, Madam Chair, Regent Krause, it's also programs like the Veterans Affairs that are, as well as college access to our traditionally underrepresented students that will help that effort. And kudos to you and to all the others who have worked in that area.
It's us, let me tell you, it is us.
There's no I in team.
Thank you. Regent Albrecht.
Madam Chair, Madam Policy Advisor, Shannon. I would just also like to commend Governor Bullock for his focus on early childhood, because we often think of higher education as something that's polarized from the early childhood education. It is absolutely critical that we see that the success at that early age and that investment is absolutely critical to higher education. These children are surviving. We need them to thrive, and we need to get them there, and that is the only way they will end up in our institutions and thriving as productive citizens and actually supporting our workforce development. So thank you so much for that, and please extend my gratitude to Governor Bullock.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Regent Albrecht. President Engstrom.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. I just want to make a couple of quick comments. This is not just Policy Advisor Shannon O'Brien. This is Policy Advisor Dr. Shannon O'Brien, a recent graduate from the Phyllis J. Washington College of Education. And I say that not just to, I won't use the word, I say it to emphasize how important this appointment is and how much I appreciate having somebody with Shannon's background in there. It sends such a strong message about the importance of education at all levels. And Shannon has been already so effective in helping the governor get out into educational communities. He was on our campus 3 times in 3 weeks, and that's a truly amazing thing. And Shannon, I very much appreciate that. And please, if you would convey to the governor what a strong message he is sending through both his own personal appearances and your work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, President Engstrom. Further questions or comments? Just one final thank you then to you, Dr. O'Brien, for your vision and your leadership and conveying both to Governor Bullock. It is indeed a very exciting time for all of us in the state of Montana to work with you and to work with him in making that vision and that leadership matter for the students that we serve. Thank you so very much. So with that then, we thank you both for joining us today. And at this point then, we have a few minutes, so I would like to take it to begin parts of the budget committee. So we will shift gears and go into the budget committee for a few minutes, and then we will recess for lunch. And if we could do that as close to noon as we could, and then come back and maybe do a little catch up when we come back. Mr. Robinson, if you think maybe we could do some of that now and do some catch up when we come back so that we honor the students' lunchtime.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we'll do our best. Boy, what a action-packed morning agenda. Major grant announcement, great presentations on performance budget, Complete College Montana, Veteran Success Initiative, Student Affairs Initiative, great comments by Superintendent Juneau, Dr. O'Brien. Maybe we just ought to think about calling it a day. Riveting operating budgets moving forward. Before we get started, I do have a couple of announcements, introductions to make. A couple of our partners that we work closely with in state government. Christine Holting Bruce is our new budget analyst with the Office of Budget and Program Planning. Christine is standing. You got to wave. You got to do those waves. And Christine has been working very closely with us in the long-range building program for a number of sessions, and she was just appointed by Director Villa to move into also the general budget analysis that'll be moving forward. So we'll work with her in both capacities. And with the Legislative Fiscal Division, we have two members of that staff here today. Joe Treem, I think Joe is a title of senior analyst or something like that. He's right up there at the top. And Christina Butler. Christina is beginning to take over the specific analysis of our budget, and she'll work with Joe also. Joe, we've worked with in the university system for a number of years when he was in the architecture engineering division. He moved into the legislative fiscal division just prior to the last legislative session. So, we have good folks to work with, and we'll begin sitting down with both Christine with an E on the end and Christina with an A on the end here in the next week or two to begin moving through the discussion, understanding of our budget issues as we begin the preparation for completing the budget for the next legislative session. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Frida Hauser for all of the great work that she does in terms of putting together the operating budget information that you have in front of you today. She works directly with the campuses and assembles all of the summary information. This is a major undertaking, and we have great fiscal folks that we work with on the campuses, and without naming all of them, I would like them to stand and maybe wave a little bit. All you budget folks out there. So it's a major endeavor when we have budget people from all of our campuses. So with that, let me see if we can just get through the first link that we have at the top of the agenda, the all funds operating budget. Just make a few comments about that budget. This is really the budget that the Board of Regents is tasked to approve, and we are presenting that to you for your approval today. And I'm asking Amy to see if she can highlight some of the figures that I will be pointing to. But the bottom line, the total all funds budget, the $1.4 billion amount that is presented there, is the total operating budget, basically spending authority that that the campuses and OCHI will be. I mean, we're asking the Board of Regents to approve that spending level for this present fiscal year 14. And you can see that it's composed of a number of different fund types. At the top of the presentation, we have the educational units and agencies of the Montana University system. In the middle, then, the community colleges, tribal college assistance is presented there, and at the bottom we have the Office of the Commissioner, the various fund types that we have within the office. Just a couple of notes regarding a couple of percentages that I want to point out, maybe make a couple comments. Under the first grouping, education units and agencies, the current operating unrestricted fund, that's the fund that we talk about most often when we are dealing with the development of the legislative budget. That's where the state funding resides in terms of the campuses. And you'll see that there's a 3% increase in that spending level. We don't have any tuition increases for this particular fiscal year. That 3% increase in spending was funded by the state of Montana for the most part. The only increases in tuition that might be there would be based on estimated enrollment increases and the tuition that would come with new students. So no tuition increases included within that dollar amount. The current unrestricted or the current restricted fund, the next line, there's a decrease of 8%, sort of a recognition that to a great extent we're going to have some downward movement in federal grants, research grants. That would be the category, the fund type in which those grants would be accounted for. The last line in that grouping, the plant funds, an increase of 22% within that particular category. That's sort of a rolling piece where a number of construction projects that would have been approved by this board over the last year or so would be rolling into that, and the spending, the expenditures for those projects would take place in the next year, so, or in this year. So we've got a fairly significant increase on the MSU campus, some increase on the UM Missoula campus, and also the Montana Tech campus that results in that. That comes up to about, those three campuses come up to about $25 million in total increase in the plant fund. And mostly increased projects, many of those may be auxiliary projects, et cetera, that we've seen in front of the board over the last year. The middle section, we have the community colleges. The community colleges did receive a fairly sizable increase in funding at in the legislature, so that's reflected there with that 10% increase. As we move down farther into the office of the commissioner, you'll see that the commissioner has increased the general fund in the office quite significantly, 28%. Now, most of that we've talked about here this morning in terms of where that grouping is. There's an increase in student assistance, the Witchy Whammy program, $1.5 million in Witchy Whammy that's included there. The workforce development discussion that was touched upon earlier today, $500,000 spending is included in that. The veteran success, $1 million. And also a funding transfer of $700,000 for the Quality Educator Loan Forgiveness Program. So looks like a large increase in spending, but most of those I think you can remember from the legislative activity in terms of some increase in funding. So it's not general operational increase for our office, but specific programs that were funded by the legislature in terms of either the increase in Witchy Whammy, veteran success, workforce development. So the general operating increase in our office is really fairly insignificant. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll stop with that, but wanted to make sure we pointed to the bottom line, that's the figure that we're looking for in terms of Board of Regents approval when we get to that action item tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And at the beginning, he was very quick to thank and recognize everyone else. And I just want to thank you, Mick, and the commissioner, and all of the folks who worked with you not this last summer, but the summer before, on rolling out all of these metrics and all of these next pieces of the conversation that will guide the dialogue this afternoon. This conversation looks a lot different now than it did several years ago because of your leadership on this, and we look forward to hearing more this afternoon. We will now break for lunch. I would ask everyone to please be very cognizant to return to the table sharply at 1 o'clock because we do have a hefty agenda this afternoon. Thank you. We'll recess until 1.